A single golden leaf drifts onto a cobblestone street, carrying with it the quiet, desperate hope of a weary world. The air in these lingering days of late summer holds a rare, amber quality. It is the kind of light that softens the sharpest edges of the earth, bathing the fields and the forests in a warm, honeyed glow. For years, the skies over this continent have been heavy with dark clouds and endless sorrow, but now, as the season gently begins to turn, a profound stillness settles over the land. It is a fragile, breathtaking quiet. You can feel it in the slow, lazy meandering of the old rivers. You can hear it in the gentle rustling of the tall grass as it brushes against the wooden fences. The world is taking a deep, restorative breath. The thick, stifling heat of the summer months is finally giving way to the cooling, soothing embrace of autumn. Across the quiet towns and the sprawling countryside, people are so very tired. They have carried the heavy, unimaginable burdens of conflict for longer than they ever thought possible, their shoulders aching beneath the weight of passing years. But in this soft, golden light, a new feeling begins to delicately bloom. It is a hesitant, fragile thing. Hope. The rumor of peace drifts on the autumn wind like the comforting scent of distant wood smoke. Perhaps, they whisper in the fading twilight as the shadows grow long, it will all be over before the first snow falls. Perhaps, this winter, the fires in the hearth will burn only for warmth, and not for survival. In the sprawling, tented camps scattered across the lush English countryside, thousands of young men sit beneath the comforting shade of ancient oaks and weeping willows. The frantic, desperate fighting of the earlier summer feels as though it belongs to another lifetime. Here, in the gentle embrace of the afternoon, they rest. They lie back in the sweet-smelling clover, hands folded behind their heads, watching the white, cotton-like clouds drift slowly across a pale, endless blue sky. For a brief, beautiful moment, they are not soldiers bound by duty and uniform. They are simply boys again, far from their homes, soaking in the fading warmth of the late afternoon sun. The loudest sound in the camp is the soft, rhythmic scratch of a pen against paper. A young man, with eyes too old for his youthful face, sits on a wooden crate and dips his pen into a small glass inkwell. He is writing a letter to his mother. His words are not filled with the terrors of the things he has seen, nor the anxieties of what he might be asked to do next. Instead, his letter is filled with the simple, beautiful, mundane dreams of tomorrow. He writes of the sprawling apple trees in their small backyard, asking if the fruit is growing heavy and sweet on the branches yet. He asks about the old dog, wondering if he still sleeps in the patch of sunlight by the kitchen door. He tells her to save him a large slice of pie, making a quiet, earnest promise that he will be walking up their front steps before the Christmas lights are strung. All around him, hundreds of other young men are doing the very same thing. They bend over their small pieces of paper, their faces softened by memories of distant places. They write to sweethearts they have not kissed in years. They write to fathers they wish to make proud. They write to little brothers and sisters whose voices they struggle to remember. With every stroke of the pen, they pour a piece of their heart onto the page. They fold these letters meticulously, smoothing the creases with gentle thumbs. They are folding away their hopes, sealing them with a quiet touch, trusting the post to carry these fragile pieces of their souls across oceans and over mountains. These young men pack their canvas kit bags with slow, unhurried motions. They move with a relaxed grace, believing the hardest days are firmly behind them. Some reach into their pockets and trace the outlines of small, treasured Lucky Charms. A smooth river stone from a favorite fishing spot. A worn, faded photograph of a girl with a bright, genuine smile. A silver coin given by a grandfather long ago. They polish their boots until they shine, and they mend the small tears in their tunics with clumsy but careful stitches. As dusk approaches, they share cigarettes in the fading light, the glowing embers pulsing like tiny, rhythmic heartbeats in the gathering dark. They speak in hushed, comforting tones, their voices blending into a low, soothing murmur that wraps around the camp like a warm blanket. Across the water, in the flat, watery landscapes of Holland, the days are measured in these same hushed tones, and stolen moments of normalcy amidst an occupied land. Here, the canals mirror the shifting, moody colors of the autumn sky. The people in these quiet villages have lived under a heavy, suffocating shadow for seasons upon seasons. They have learned to step lightly on the cobblestones. They have learned to keep their eyes lowered and their voices entirely soft. But this autumn wind seems to be whispering back to them. It rustles through the wooden sails of the old windmills and dances across the flat, open fields of heather. In the dim light of solitary candles, mothers sit in their kitchens, mending worn clothing with gentle, practiced hands. They pull the thread smoothly, their movements a testament to quiet, enduring resilience. As they work, they tell their children soft bedtime stories of the days before the darkness came. They paint pictures with their words, speaking of a time when the narrow streets rang freely with laughter, when the bakeries smelled of sweet pastries, and the church bells sang their joyous notes into the open air. The children listen with wide eyes, holding onto these memories of a world they barely know, but deeply long for. In the shadowy corners of these homes, fathers sit leaning close to hidden, makeshift radios. The volume is turned down to a barely perceptible whisper. They listen through the static, their expressions completely still, catching fragmented words that speak of movement, of a great tide slowly turning, of liberation finally drawing near. They do not dare to speak these massive hopes aloud. To speak them would be to risk breaking the fragile spell. They fear the wind itself might carry their secrets away. Instead, they share a profound look across the kitchen table. A subtle nod of the head. A softening of the lines around the eyes. A silent, shared acknowledgement that the long, endless night might finally be giving way to dawn. In a small bedroom tucked beneath the eaves of an old house, a young girl presses her cheek against the cold glass of her window. She traces the faint outline of the distant trees against the silver light of the moon. Tucked safely beneath her mattress is a small tin box, and inside it, a single piece of hard candy she has saved for nearly a year. She is waiting for the perfect moment to taste its sweetness, a moment of true, unburdened celebration. She dreams of the day when strangers will arrive from the sky, bringing with them the breathtaking taste of freedom. She does not know how they will come, or when, only that the air feels different tonight. It feels charged with a gentle, humming anticipation. There is a profound, heartbreaking innocence to these quiet September days. The generals and the planners sit in brightly lit rooms far away, drawing lines on sprawling maps, setting a great and terrible machinery into motion. But we will not linger with them. We will not look at their maps or study their grand designs. Our gaze remains here, in the quiet dark, with the boys looking up at the foreign stars, trying to find the familiar constellations their fathers once taught them to trace. Both the young soldier resting in the English grass and the young girl looking out her Dutch window are staring up at the very same sky. They share the same moon, a pale, luminous pearl floating in an ocean of dark velvet. They share the same quiet, unspoken prayer. Let it end. Let us be whole again. Let the days of fear gently wash away, leaving only peace in their wake. Unbeknownst to the boy sealing his letter with a kiss, unbeknownst to the father turning off the hidden radio, a vast shadow is preparing to stretch across this serene landscape. The peaceful camps will soon be transformed. The clear, open skies will soon be filled with a sight unlike any the world has ever seen. The delicate illusion of the dying summer will be shattered. Yet, in this fleeting, beautiful moment, let us allow them their peace. Let us watch them as they sleep in their canvas cots and their narrow beds, their chests rising and falling in steady, rhythmic, peaceful breaths. Let us feel the soft autumn breeze as it gently rustles the leaves, carrying away the worries of the day, leaving only the quiet comfort of the night. The world hangs suspended in a delicate, perfect balance. It is like a single dewdrop trembling on the edge of a green leaf, catching the silver light of the moon, holding its shape perfectly before it must inevitably fall. The entire continent breathes out a collective, weary sigh, settling into the darkness, holding tightly to the dream of an early peace. It is a beautiful dream. A gentle, fragile dream woven from the golden threads of a fading summer, floating softly, quietly, beautifully, on a breath of autumn wind. A single breath plumes in the cool, pre-dawn air, hanging like a fragile ghost against the dark silhouettes of silent airplanes. It is the quietest hour of the morning, that profound, delicate stillness just before the sun decides to wake the world. A soft, silvery mist clings to the damp grass of the English airfields, blanketing the long stretches of tarmac in a gentle, rolling sea of pale gray. The world feels incredibly small right now, contained entirely within the soft, warm pools of light cast by the occasional lantern swinging in the dark. The leaves on the distant trees are perfectly still, holding their breath in the cool September chill, waiting for the day to begin. Inside the great canvas tents and the arched metal hangars, the young men are slowly waking. There are no loud bugles this morning, no sharp commands shouted into the crisp air. Instead, there is only a soft, rustling chorus. The sound of heavy woolen blankets being gently folded back. The quiet, rhythmic lacing of tall leather boots. The striking of a single match to light a shared cigarette, the small, bright orange glow illuminating young, thoughtful eyes for just a fleeting second before fading back into the shadows. These men move with a slow, heavy grace. They carry the weight of the morning on their shoulders, but there is no panic in their motions. Only a quiet, solemn acceptance. They speak in hushed, comforting whispers, their voices barely rising above the hum of the gentle wind outside. They ask to borrow a tin of boot polish. They ask the time. They ask if anyone has a spare piece of chewing gum. These simple, ordinary questions are a comforting anchor, keeping them tethered to the familiar world they know, even as they prepare to step into the vast unknown. In the center of the hangars, beneath the dim, amber glow of hanging bulbs, lies an ocean of silk. Beautiful, shimmering acres of green, brown, and white fabric, pooling gently on the long wooden packing tables. The men stand beside this silk, their hands moving with a slow, practiced reverence. They are checking and folding their parachutes. It is a quiet, deeply personal ritual. If you watch closely, you might see that some hands tremble, just a little, fingertips vibrating like the delicate wings of a moth. But they smooth the cool fabric with tender, deliberate care. They fold the panels one by one, tucking the thin, strong rigging lines into their neat, orderly rows. They know that this delicate, rustling cloth is their only lifeline to the earth. As they press the canvas packs closed, they run their palms over the heavy stitching. Perhaps they think of the tired women in the brick factories back home who sewed these very seams beneath bright, humming lights. In the quiet of their hearts, these young men offer a silent, simple thank you to those unseen hands, trusting those careful stitches with their lives. Outside, the rolling mist begins to glow with the faintest hint of morning light. The sky shifts from a deep, velvety indigo to a soft, bruised purple. Beside the runway, a field kitchen has been set up, a small oasis of warmth in the damp chill. The men gather around the large metal urns, holding out their battered tin mugs. The hot tea is sweet and thick, and as they wrap their cold fingers around the warm metal, a collective sigh seems to ripple through the group. They stand in small, huddled circles, their breath mingling in the cold air. They sip their tea slowly, letting the warmth travel down into their chests, chasing away the shivers that come from the cold, and from the waiting. Some men are painting their faces, applying dark smears of charcoal and burnt cork to their youthful skin. They help one another, a thumb gently smudging the dark lines across a friend's cheekbone, transforming the familiar face of a boy from down the street into the quiet mask of a soldier. It is a tender, intimate gesture, an unspoken promise that they will watch out for one another in the hours to come. They are carrying so much weight. The heavy canvas webbing, the extra rations. The canteens filled to the brim, the thick woolen uniforms that scratch gently at their necks. But the heaviest things they carry are completely invisible. Tucked deep inside their breast pockets, resting safely against their beating hearts, are the small, fragile tokens of love. A folded letter, worn soft at the creases from being read 100 times. A sepia photograph of a young woman standing on a sunny porch, her smile frozen in a happier time. A lock of baby hair tied with a pale blue ribbon. These tiny treasures are their true armor. They press their hands to their chests, feeling the comforting bump of the paper and the photographs beneath the heavy canvas, drawing a quiet, endless strength from the people who are waiting for them to come home. As the sun slowly breaches the horizon, painting the edges of the low clouds in soft strokes of peach and gold, the time comes to walk to the plains. The aircraft wait patiently on the tarmac, massive silhouettes against the waking sky. They look like great, slumbering birds, their metal wings slick with the morning dew. The men fall into line. The walk is slow, their boots making a steady, rhythmic crunch against the gravel. There is a profound comfort in this shared rhythm. No man walks alone. They are surrounded by their brothers, bound together by an invisible, unbreakable thread. If a man stumbles under the immense weight of his gear, a hand instantly reaches out to steady him. A gentle pat on the shoulder. A quiet murmur of encouragement. "I've got you," the touch says. "We are together." They climb the small metal ladders and step into the bellies of the great transport planes and the silent, wooden gliders. Inside, it smells of aviation fuel, cold aluminum, and old canvas. The air is cool and still. They take their seats on the long metal benches, sitting shoulder to shoulder, knee to knee. They are packed in so closely that they can feel the steady breathing of the man beside them. In this cramped, dim space, that closeness is a blessing. The warmth of a friend's shoulder pressing against your own is a quiet reminder that you are part of something larger, something resilient and strong. They begin to hook their static lines to the strong metal cable that runs the length of the ceiling. The heavy metal clips snap into place with a solid, reassuring click. 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 The sound travels down the line like a steady heartbeat. They check their own harnesses, pulling tightly on the canvas straps, and then, without needing to be asked, they check the harness of the man sitting in front of them. They tug on the heavy webbing, ensuring every buckle is secure, running their hands over the canvas to make sure everything is perfect. It is a final act of devotion, a physical manifestation of their care for one another. Now, there is nothing left to do but wait. They lean their heads back against the cold metal fuselage. Some close their eyes, letting the gentle rocking of the stationary plane soothe their tired minds. The light filtering in through the small, round windows is pale and soft, illuminating the dust motes dancing lazily in the air. In this quiet space between the earth and the sky, the private prayers begin. They are not grand, booming prayers for glory or triumph. They are the simple, whispered prayers of young men who want to see the leaves change color again. They pray for courage, hoping they will not let their brothers down. They pray for the wind to be gentle. They pray for the parachute silk to open like a perfect, white flower. And above all, they pray for the faces in the photographs tucked into their pockets. They send their love backward, across the miles, whispering silent goodbyes and quiet promises to return. The pilot's voice crackles softly over the radio, a gentle murmur breaking the stillness. A moment later, the great engines begin to turn. At first, it is just a low, rumbling vibration that starts in the floorboards and travels up through the soles of their boots. Then, the propellers catch, spinning into silver blurs, and the hum grows into a steady, powerful drone. But even as the engines roar to life, the feeling inside the cabin remains strangely peaceful. The waiting is over. The agonizing hours of anticipation have melted away, leaving only a calm, singular focus. They look across the narrow aisle at one another. They offer small, gentle smiles. A reassuring wink. A slow nod of the head. The plane begins to roll forward, moving slowly at first, then gathering a smooth, steady speed down the long stretch of tarmac. The men sway slightly with the motion, their shoulders gently bumping, a silent, comforting rhythm. They watch the morning mist blur past the small windows, the green fields of England rushing by, turning into a beautiful, abstract painting of colors. And then, with a soft, almost imperceptible tilt, the heavy wheels leave the earth. They are weightless for a brief, magical second. The bumping of the runway falls away, replaced by the smooth, sweeping embrace of the air. They are airborne, carried aloft on canvas wings in the quiet, enduring prayers of a generation. They leave the damp morning mist behind, rising up into the pale blue light of the new day. They are soaring into the open sky, wrapped in the comforting warmth of their brotherhood, floating gently toward whatever the morning may bring, held safe, for now, in the cradle of the clouds. A low, steady hum vibrates through the wooden floorboards of a quiet Dutch farmhouse, a sound so deep and resonant it is felt in the soul long before it reaches the ears. It is a Sunday morning in mid-September. But the calendar hardly matters in a world where time has felt frozen, caught in a suspended, colorless winter for years on end. In the quiet towns and flat, sweeping farmlands of Holland, the morning has begun like 1,000 mornings before it. Church bells ring out a muted, cautious song across the damp fields. Families sit around worn wooden tables, sharing meager rations of dark bread and weak, watered-down tea. They speak in soft, guarded murmurs, ever mindful of who might be listening. The world is cloaked in a heavy, familiar stillness, a blanket of occupation that has smothered the joy and the vibrancy from the landscape. But today, the crisp autumn air holds a strange, electric tension. The wind sweeping through the tall reeds along the canal seems to be holding its breath. Then, the sound begins. It starts not in the sky above, but deep within the earth below. It is a gentle, rhythmic trembling in the delicate teacups sitting on their saucers. A soft rattling of the thin glass in the bedroom window panes. Out in the pastures, the cows stop grazing, lifting their heavy heads to listen to the shifting wind. The people step hesitantly out of their doorways. They leave their half-empty cups on the tables. They step out from beneath the comforting shadow of the church steeples, shielding their eyes from the bright, clear midday sun. The sound is growing. It is no longer a distant hum, it is a mighty, rolling river of sound pouring across the heavens. It is a deep, thrumming heartbeat that fills the entire horizon, vibrating in the chest, echoing in the hollows of the ancient trees. And then, they see them. Over the distant, hazy tree line, where the flat green earth meets the pale blue sky, a dark smudge appears. It grows wider and thicker, stretching endlessly from one edge of the world to the other. It is an armada. Thousands upon thousands of airplanes, flying so low and so perfectly formed they seem to blot out the sun. They come in great, sweeping, majestic waves, a magnificent, impossible flock of silver and olive green birds. The sky is completely filled with them, a sprawling, endless procession that simply defies belief. Behind the great, rumbling transport planes, attached by long, thick ropes of woven nylon, glide the silent wooden ships. They look like fragile, beautiful kites floating on the gentle autumn breeze, their wide, canvas wings catching the bright sunlight. They move with a quiet, graceful dignity, trailing behind their roaring companions like faithful shadows. The sheer scale of it all is too massive for the mind to entirely grasp. It is as if the stars themselves have decided to come down from the night sky and arrange themselves in the bright light of day. They are constellations in the daylight sky, moving with a deliberate, beautiful purpose. Down below, on the quiet cobblestone streets and the narrow dirt paths, the people of Holland stand completely still. For a long, breathless moment, no one moves. No one speaks. The sight is too vast, too overwhelming for words. And then, slowly, beautifully, the realization washes over them. A frail, elderly man, leaning heavily on his carved wooden cane, takes off his worn, woolen cap. He presses it tightly against his chest, and as he looks up into the roaring sky, a single, silent tear traces a path down his withered cheek. He remembers the days of freedom, and in this roaring sky, he sees its return. Beside him, a mother instinctively pulls her young daughter close, wrapping her faded apron around the girl's small shoulders. But she is not hiding her child from danger. She is pointing up at the sky, her hand trembling with an emotion so profound it cannot be named. "Look," she whispers, her voice breaking softly. "Look." All across the countryside, people are stepping out of their hidden cellars and their quiet homes. They stand on the grassy banks of the slow-moving canals. They stand in the open squares of their villages, beside the ancient stone fountains. They look up, and their upturned faces are bathed in a shifting mosaic of light and shadow as the great wings pass overhead. For years, the shadows of airplanes creeping across the grass meant fear. They meant rushing to the dark, holding their breath, waiting for the earth to shake. But today, these shadows feel entirely different. They feel like a warm, protective embrace. They are the shadows of hope. They are the beautiful, soaring promise that the long, solitary night is finally coming to a gentle close. Up in the airplanes, peering out through the small, scratched, circular windows, the young men look down at the waking world below. They see the beautiful patchwork quilt of the Dutch countryside, a vibrant tapestry of lush green pastures, golden fields of harvest, and shimmering ribbons of blue water reflecting the sky. They see the red-tiled roofs of the little farmhouses, looking like tiny, perfect toys resting softly in the grass. And as they look closer, straining their eyes against the glare of the sun, they see the people. They see the sudden, frantic flashes of white cloth. Bed sheets, table linens, handkerchiefs, torn pieces of old shirts. Anything white that the people could find, waved frantically in the air as a desperate, joyous greeting. The young soldiers pressed their hands against the cold glass, their hearts swelling with a sudden, overwhelming tenderness. The tight, knotting fear and the agonizing waiting of the early morning gently melt away, replaced by a profound, humbling sense of purpose. They are no longer just soldiers flying blindly over a map of foreign terrain. They are flying over homes, over families, over people who have waited so incredibly long for them to arrive. One young man, his face still streaked with the dark charcoal applied in the cool English dawn, gently touches the glass where a tiny figure is waving far below by a solitary windmill. He thinks of his own younger sister, playing in a small, overgrown garden miles away across the sea. He wonders if the little girl down there likes to climb the apple trees, if she has a favorite worn-out doll, if she has forgotten what sweet sugar tastes like. He sends a quiet, loving thought down through the roaring air, a silent promise to make the sky safe for her to play beneath once more. Next to him, a friend rests a heavy, comforting hand on his shoulder. They don't speak. The deafening roar of the engines makes words impossible, but in that firm, gentle grip, an entire conversation takes place. "We are here," the touch softly says. "We are finally here." The flight continues, a steady, hypnotic journey across the patchwork land. The vibration of the floorboards becomes a soothing, rhythmic hum against their heavy leather boots. Some men close their eyes again, letting the immense, collective energy of the armada carry them forward. They feel incredibly safe wrapped inside this endless river of flying machines. It feels as though nothing in the whole world could possibly stop them, as though they are being carried forward on a river of pure goodwill. The sky belongs to them today. It is a sky filled not with the harsh, terrifying lightning of storms, but with the steady, comforting glow of 1,000 mechanical fireflies, guiding them softly toward their destiny. Back on the earth, the endless procession goes on and on. For over an hour, the sky is simply a moving roof of metal and canvas. The sound becomes a physical presence, a heavy, comforting blanket that wraps around the sleepy villages and the quiet fields. People who haven't spoken to their neighbors in months, kept apart by fear and a necessary, quiet suspicion, now stand shoulder to shoulder by the wooden fences. They share a look of absolute, unvarnished wonder. Some people fall to their knees in the soft, damp grass, folding their hands in quiet, desperate prayers of gratitude. Others simply stand and weep freely, the warm tears washing away years of hidden, accumulated sorrow. The sheer beauty of the sight is a soothing balm to their weary souls. It is a magnificent, roaring choir in the heavens, singing a song of deliverance that drowns out all the fear of the past. As the sun begins its slow descent toward the afternoon, casting a golden, honeyed light over the landscape, the great armada nears its final destination. The wide rivers below twist and turn, catching the sunlight like fallen silver necklaces resting on the green earth. The deep, ancient forests stand thick and inviting. Inside the bellies of the Great Plains, the tension begins to subtly shift. The quiet, gentle contemplation of the flight gives way to a slow, deliberate readiness. The men sit up a little straighter on their metal benches. They run their hands over their canvas harnesses one last time, checking the heavy metal clips. They look toward the small, colored light near the open doorway, waiting for it to change, waiting for the signal that will change their lives forever. But for now, in these final, fleeting moments of flight, there is still peace. There is still the beautiful, majestic soaring. They are suspended gracefully between the heavens and the earth, carried softly on the wings of an autumn wind, surrounded by a constellation of brothers. They are floating over a world that is looking up at them with a desperate, beautiful, and unyielding hope. Let us watch them glide for just a moment longer, held perfectly safe in the golden, shifting light of the afternoon, floating in the quiet sanctuary of the sky. For one heart-stopping second, the deafening roar of the engines vanishes, replaced by the cool, rushing silence of the open sky. Inside the cavernous, vibrating belly of the transport planes, the small, round light above the open doorway blinks from a harsh, anxious red to a bright, vibrant green. It is a color so simple, so completely ordinary, yet in this high altitude, it holds the fragile weight of 1,000 destinies. The young men stand up. The wind whips fiercely at the loose fabric of their trousers, an invisible hand pulling them toward the edge. They step forward, not with the fierce, loud cries of ancient warriors, but with the quiet, determined shuffle of ordinary boys doing what they must. They move in a seamless, rhythmic line. A gentle pat on the back of the man in front of them. A slow exhale. And then, one by one, they step out of the metal doorway and disappear into the vast, waiting embrace of the rushing air. There is a brief, breathtaking moment of falling. The stomach rises, the rushing wind roars in their ears, stripping away all thought, all worry, all memory. And then comes the fierce, sudden tug. The heavy canvas harnesses bite softly into their shoulders. Above them, a miraculous sound rings out in the thin air, the crisp, sudden snapping of silk catching the autumn wind. Beautiful, immense canopies blossom in the bright sunlight. They are brilliant shades of olive green, deep earth brown, and pure, radiant white. They unfurl like giant, vibrant flowers blooming instantly in the cold, high atmosphere. And then, the most profoundly shocking thing happens. The world becomes entirely, beautifully still. After hours of enduring the suffocating fumes, the cramped metal benches, and the bone-rattling vibration of the airplanes, the air is suddenly swept clean. It is profoundly quiet. The men are suspended, hanging weightless between the heavens and the earth. They are pendulums swinging gently beneath clouds of woven silk. They breathe out, a long, shaky sigh of relief that joins the gentle breeze. The chaotic, mechanical world of the war they just left behind feels like a distant, fading dream. Up here, in this perfect blue dome, there is only peace. If you were to stand on a cloud and look out across the horizon, you would see thousands of them. They look like dandelion seeds blown from the hand of a giant child, scattering across the heavens. They look like delicate snowflakes woven from silk, drifting lazily down toward the waiting earth below. It is a sight of such breathtaking, almost heartbreaking beauty that it is entirely impossible to look at it and think of conflict. It looks merely like a quiet, sweeping miracle. Hanging in his heavy canvas harness, a boy from a small, dusty farming town looks over and sees his best friend drifting just 30 yards away. The wind is too loud to speak, to call out a greeting or a joke. But they slowly turn their heads. They catch each other's eye across the empty expanse of air. A small, nervous wave of a gloved hand. A gentle smile, half hidden behind thick leather chin straps. In this vast, sweeping open sky, they are completely alone, floating in their own solitary bubbles of quiet, yet they are entirely, perfectly together. Another young soldier looks up into the hollow of his canopy. He marvels at the way the bright afternoon sunlight filters through the thin, tightly woven fabric, turning the silk completely luminous, glowing from within. The soft, filtered light reminds him of the sheer, white curtains in his grandmother's parlor, how they used to catch the golden afternoon sun when he would fall asleep on her braided rug as a child. He closes his eyes for just a moment. He lets the gentle, rhythmic sway of the parachute rock him back and forth, holding him like a cradle in the sky. He listens to the soft, rhythmic creaking of the suspension lines, a sound like an old wooden porch swing on a lazy summer evening. Below them, the world is a magnificent, sleeping quilt. The flat, vibrant green pastures of the Dutch countryside stretch out in perfect, neat squares. The dark, mysterious ribbons of ancient pine forests border the fields. The wide canals and rivers catch the sun, turning into glinting, silver threads that sew the landscape together. From this high up, it looks so incredibly peaceful. So completely perfect. It does not look like a place of sorrow, or fear, or endless waiting. It looks like a masterpiece, rendered in the soft, rich oils of autumn. Down in those quiet fields, the people of the Netherlands have stopped breathing. A young woman, her hands calloused from years of working the soil, leans heavily against the smooth wooden handle of her hoe. She looks up, raising a dirt-smudged hand to shield her eyes from the bright glare of the sun. The sky is raining men. They fall so slowly, with such unhurried, graceful dignity. To her, standing in the quiet of her potato field, they do not look like soldiers. They look like angels descending from the heavens. She forgets to breathe. A single tear tracks through the dust on her cheek. Beside her, a little boy drops his wooden toy into the dirt. He reaches his small, eager hands up to the sky, balancing on his tiptoes, as if he might be able to catch one of the falling silk snowflakes. For years, they have prayed for this day. They have whispered for it in the dark, damp cellars while the world shook above them. They have dreamt of the sky opening up to deliver them. And now, the answer to those countless, whispered prayers is arriving on the gentle breath of the late September wind. The quiet of the descent is a beautiful, comforting lyre. It wraps its invisible arms around the descending boys, whispering softly in their ears that everything will be all right. For this brief, magical span of 2, maybe 3 minutes, there is no pain. There is no anxiety. There is only the cool wind against their cheeks, the warmth of the sun on their shoulders, and the slow, majestic drift downward. They are entirely untouchable here. They are boys suspended in golden amber, kept perfect and safe in the tranquil sanctuary of the afternoon sky. But the earth below is patient, and the earth is always rising. The miniature toys of the landscape slowly begin to take their true shape. The tiny, perfect green squares become wide fields of tall, swaying grass and thick, purple heather. The thin, dark lines become rows of towering, ancient poplar trees, their leaves rustling in the wind. The delicate silver threads become wide, cold waters with muddy banks. The sharp, intricate details of the world come back into vivid focus. The dream of the sky is gently, inevitably coming to an end. The men reach up with cold hands, grabbing the coarse, thick risers of their parachutes. Their knuckles turn white beneath their gloves. They prepare their young bodies for the firm meeting with the ground. They tuck their chins tight to their chests, they pull their elbows in, they bend their knees slightly, just as they have practiced 100 times before in the soft, safe fields of home. But even as the tension returns to their muscles, they carry the profound peace of the sky down with them in their hearts. The ground rushes up to greet them. There is a soft, heavy thud. The loud, dry rustle of the thick heather. The tumbling, breathless roll into the soft, dark dirt. And then, the sudden, chaotic collapse of the beautiful silk canopies. The parachutes spill over the tall grass, suddenly losing their majestic shape, looking merely like mountains of discarded laundry, entirely devoid of the magical wind that gave them life just seconds before. The great, silent wooden gliders, having unhooked from their tow planes, sweep gracefully over the tree lines. They come down into the soft fields like weary, giant birds. Their wooden bellies slide through the tall grass with a long, soft, tearing sound, kicking up clouds of dust and floating dandelion seeds, before finally coming to a gentle, shuddering halt alongside the scattered silk. The boy from the farming town lies in the grass for a moment, letting his heart slow its frantic beating. He looks up at the sky one last time, an empty, endless blue where he was just floating seconds ago. He stands up slowly, brushing the Dutch soil from his knees. He reaches to his chest and unclips his heavy canvas harness. The thick metal buckles fall away into the heather with a muted clink. He is standing in a foreign field, hundreds of miles from his home, surrounded by a landscape he has only ever seen on folded paper maps. He takes a deep, slow breath of the air. It smells of damp earth, of crushed pine needles beneath his boots, and of the very faint, sweet, impossible promise of liberation. He reaches into his breast pocket, his trembling fingers brushing against the folded letter he wrote just hours ago in the quiet English dawn. It is still there. He is still here. All around him, in the vast, open fields, other boys are rising from the grass like ghosts emerging from the earth. They are gathering their parachutes, bundling the endless yards of precious silk into their arms so the wind does not drag them away. They move quietly, instinctively seeking one another out in the tall, concealing heather. There are no loud shouts of triumph, no grand, sweeping speeches of conquest. There is only the soft, rhythmic crunch of heavy boots on the dry ground, the whispered, relieved exchange of familiar names, and the quiet, profound comfort of finding a brother's face in an unfamiliar land. The sky above is entirely empty now, save for a few drifting, wispy clouds. The beautiful snowflakes have all landed, melting into the landscape. The fleeting, breathless peace of the serene descent is over, replaced by the harsh, waiting reality of the silent fields, the quiet woods, and the long road ahead. But as the boys stand together, adjusting their gear and looking toward the distant tree lanes, the memory of that perfect, floating quiet remains. It is tucked safely away in the quiet corners of their minds, a small, glowing ember of pure serenity. It is a gentle reminder of the beauty that exists above the fray, a soft, whispered secret they will carry forward with them, stepping quietly into the gathering shadows of the late afternoon. A single, wooden shutter creaks open, spilling a thin sliver of warm, golden light onto the ancient, shadowed street. For miles, the young men have walked through the soft, yielding earth of the countryside, their heavy boots moving through tall grass and sandy farm tracks. But now, the landscape gently shifts. The wide, open fields narrow into neat rows of tall, narrow houses built from dark, weathered brick. The soft earth gives way to the hard, uneven rhythm of ancient cobblestones. The sound of their march changes. It is no longer the quiet rustle of the heather, but a steady, resonant clatter that echoes softly off the stone walls of the narrow Dutch streets. It is a sound these quiet towns have not heard in years, the sound of footsteps that do not march with rigid, terrifying authority, but with the weary, shuffling grace of ordinary boys far from home. The towns are holding their breath. For hours, the people inside have listened to the distant, muffled thuds rolling across the fields, a low vibration felt in the floorboards. They have huddled in their cellars and sat quietly in their darkened parlors, wondering if the rumors carried on the autumn wind could possibly be true. They have learned, through long, hard seasons of sorrow, to guard their hopes carefully, to hide them away like fragile glass. But as the footsteps draw nearer, a hesitant curiosity begins to stir. Behind the lace curtains of the front windows, pale faces press against the cool glass. They watch the shadows moving at the end of the street. They look at the silhouettes of the helmets. They are not the harsh, familiar shapes that have patrolled these streets for so long. They are rounder, covered in canvas netting and woven leaves. And the way these men walk, it is different. They do not march in stiff, intimidating lines. They walk on the edges of the road, their eyes tired but gentle, offering small, polite nods to the empty houses. Slowly, ever so slowly, the heavy wooden doors begin to unlock. The metallic click of deadbolts turning sounds like a chorus of tiny, breaking chains. An elderly woman, her silver hair pulled back in a neat, simple bun, steps out onto her small stone porch. She wears a faded wool shawl draped over her frail shoulders. She looks at the young soldier closest to her. He is no older than her own grandson, his face smudged with dirt and the dark remnants of charcoal from the morning's flight. He stops. He lowers the heavy barrel of his rifle toward the ground, a gesture of absolute, unspoken peace. He looks at her, and his tense, weary face softens into a slow, tentative smile. The woman's hands begin to tremble. She raises them to her mouth, stifling a quiet gasp as tears well in her pale blue eyes. She does not speak English, and he does not speak Dutch, but in this breathless, beautiful moment, no words are needed. The smile is enough. The presence of this exhausted boy in his unfamiliar uniform is everything. Suddenly, the quiet street begins to bloom. It is a subtle, beautiful awakening. More doors open. Families step out onto the cobblestones, stepping softly, as if they are afraid of waking up from a wonderful dream. And then, from deep within the pockets of their aprons, from the hidden drawers of old wooden cabinets, from beneath the loose floorboards of their attics, comes the color. Orange. It is the forbidden color of their royal house, a symbol of their identity that had been banished to the dark for years. Now, bright orange ribbons are tied hastily into little girls' hair. Orange armbands are slipped over the sleeves of worn jackets. Small, hand-sewn flags, wrinkled from years of hiding, are unfurled into the gentle evening breeze. The drab, gray street is suddenly washed in the vibrant, defiant color of a reclaimed home. The young soldiers stop their marching. They stand in the center of the road, entirely overwhelmed by the sudden, quiet tide of humanity washing over them. They have trained for the harsh, unforgiving realities of battle, but nothing could have prepared them for this. They are surrounded by a profound, gentle gratitude that feels almost too heavy to bear. A young father steps forward, carrying a ceramic jug of fresh, cold water. He pours it into a small glass and hands it to a tall, broad-shouldered soldier who looks like he hasn't slept in days. The soldier takes off his heavy canvas helmet, revealing a head of messy, damp hair. He takes the glass with large, dirt-stained hands, handling it as gently as if it were made of spun sugar. He drinks. And the cold water tastes like a miracle. He hands the glass back, wiping his mouth with the back of his sleeve, and whispers a quiet, sincere thank you. The father simply nods, placing a hand over his own heart, his eyes conveying a depth of thanks that words could never capture. Down the line, a little boy, perhaps 5 years old, breaks away from his mother's side. He runs up to a soldier resting on a low brick wall. In his small, outstretched hands, he holds a single, perfectly red apple. It is a precious thing, a treasure from the late summer harvest, saved for a special occasion. The soldier, a boy from the sprawling farmlands of the American Midwest, looks at the apple, and then at the child. He rests his rifle against the wall and takes the apple, gently ruffling the little boy's hair. The soldier's eyes fill with tears. In this small, perfect fruit, he sees the orchards of his own home. He sees his own little brothers. He is a world away from everything he knows, carrying the terrible tools of a vast conflict, yet here he is, being offered the simple, innocent sweetness of the earth by a child who only knows him as a friend. The air is filled with the soft, beautiful hum of overlapping languages. It is a gentle, chaotic symphony of whispered Dutch greetings and soft English replies. Thank you, they say. God bless you, they whisper. They reach out just to touch the rough wool of the soldiers' sleeves, needing to feel the coarse fabric to assure themselves that these boys are real, that they are not just another trick of the fading light. Mothers press small, folded squares of paper into the soldiers' hands, hasty, desperate notes of thanks, written in broken English, to be kept as talismans against the dark. A young medic, carrying a heavy canvas bag of supplies over his shoulder, finds himself pulled into a gentle embrace by a woman who reminds him so intensely of his own mother that it makes his chest ache. She pats his cheek with a soft, warm hand, murmuring soothing words he cannot understand, but whose meaning is entirely clear. "You are safe here," her touch says. "You are loved." For a fleeting second, the medic closes his eyes. He lets himself be a son again, leaning into the warmth of her hand, letting the exhaustion of the day drain away into the cool evening air. He promises himself that when the night finally settles, he will write a letter home. He will tell his mother about the cobblestones, about the orange ribbons, and about the woman who held his face in her hands and made the war disappear, if only for a moment. The sunlight begins to deepen, turning the sky into a rich canopy of bruised purple and burnt orange. The long shadows of the houses stretch across the street, blanketing the cobblestones in a soft, welcoming dusk. The air grows cooler, carrying the familiar, comforting scent of wood smoke as small fires are lit in kitchen hearths for the first time in what feels like an eternity without fear. The joy in the street is not a loud, raucous celebration. It is not a parade with brass bands and shouting crowds. It is an intimate, holy thing. It is the quiet, tearful relief of a family reuniting after a long, dark storm. The soldiers share their own small treasures in return. They dig into their deep pockets and pull out pieces of hard chocolate, pressed into silver foil. They break the chocolate into small squares and hand them to the wide-eyed children, watching as the kids taste the rich, sweet cocoa for the very first time in their young lives. They hand out small, colorful packs of chewing gum, demonstrating with exaggerated, comical chewing motions how it works, drawing out soft, musical giggles from the children. They offer cigarettes to the older men, lighting them with a shared match, the small flare of the flame illuminating the deep, tired lines of their faces, faces that are finally learning how to relax. But as the twilight deepens, a subtle shift occurs in the air. Underneath the gentle murmurs and the soft laughter, another sound begins to make itself known. It is low, and deep, and very far away. It sounds like the rumble of a summer thunderstorm gathering just over the horizon, a slow, heavy beating of a giant, distant drum. It is the artillery. It is the war, waiting patiently in the dark. The young men hear it. Their posture subtly changes. The relaxed slump of their shoulders straightens just a fraction. Their hands casually, instinctively, drift back toward the heavy canvas straps of their weapons. The beautiful, timeless pause of the afternoon is coming to its inevitable end. They know, and the people of the town know, that this sanctuary is only temporary. The road stretches on, leading out of the warm light of the village and into the cold, uncertain darkness of the night. There are bridges still to be reached. There are brothers still waiting in the woods ahead. The commanders do not shout. They simply offer quiet, murmuring commands down the line. It is time to move. The parting is slow and deeply reluctant. The soldiers hand back the empty water glasses. They give one last, gentle squeeze to the hands that reached out to them. The civilians step back onto the narrow stone sidewalks, their smiles tinged with a sudden, profound worry. They watch as the boys fall back into their loose, shuffling lines. The orange ribbons flutter softly in the growing wind. An old man, the one who wept when the planes first flew over, raises his hand in a silent, trembling salute. The boys nod back to him as they pass. They carry the warmth of the village with them now. They carry the taste of the apple, the smell of the wood smoke, and the memory of the tearful smiles. These small, perfect moments of humanity have become their armor against the coming night. The clatter of their boots on the cobblestones resumes its steady, rhythmic cadence. It grows fainter and fainter as they move down the street, disappearing into the gathering shadows at the edge of town. The people stand on their doorsteps, watching until the very last silhouette is swallowed by the dark. They fold their hands in the quiet evening air, sending 1,000 silent, desperate prayers into the sky, asking whatever stars are listening to watch over the boys who brought the light back to their streets, and to guide their heavy footsteps safely through the dark. A heavy drop of dew rolls down the cold, green steel of a gun barrel, falling silently into the damp earth below. The morning arrives not with a sudden burst of sunlight, but with a slow, gentle lifting of the deep, gray mist. Across the flat, sprawling countryside, a strange and magnificent procession is waking up. For miles and miles, stretched along a single, narrow highway, sits a slumbering giant made of iron and canvas. These are the great machines of the rescue force. They are parked nose to tail, a seemingly endless line of heavy tanks, supply trucks, and armored cars, all resting quietly on a ribbon of asphalt that cuts directly through the heart of the watery Dutch lowlands. The air is entirely still, holding the heavy, damp chill of early autumn, and the world is wrapped in a profound, expectant silence. Let us look closer, past the thick armor and the heavy, mud-caked treads, and step inside the cramped, dim interior of one of these great steel beasts. Inside, the world is reduced to a tiny, metallic room. It smells intensely of diesel fuel, worn leather, old wool, and the faint, sweet scent of pipe tobacco. The space is so incredibly small that the 4 men who live inside it must constantly fold their bodies around one another. They sit shoulder to shoulder, knee to knee, sharing the same heavy, stale air, breathing in a quiet, unconscious rhythm. The thick steel walls separate them entirely from the morning breeze outside, turning their cabin into a private, isolated sanctuary. The young tank commander, a boy whose eyes have seen far too many seasons change from the top of a turret, leans back against his small leather seat. He reaches down into the shadows near his boots and retrieves a battered metal thermos. His hands, stained with dark grease and deeply calloused, unscrew the cap with practiced, gentle care. He pours a small amount of tea into a chipped tin cup. It is completely cold, having lost its warmth in the long, dark hours of the night. Yet, as he takes a slow sip, he closes his eyes and lets the bitter liquid coat his throat. In his mind, he is not drinking cold rations in a steel box. He is sitting at his mother's kitchen table, the morning sun streaming through the lace curtains, the smell of baking bread filling the room, and the tea in his cup is steaming and sweet. He passes the tin cup to the gunner sitting below him. They do not speak. They simply share a long, understanding look. In the soft, amber glow of the tiny instrument lights, their faces look extraordinarily tired, yet profoundly gentle. They pass the cup around in the semi-darkness, a silent communion of brothers sharing whatever small comforts the morning has to offer. Suddenly, a low, rumbling vibration begins deep within the belly of the machine. The driver, tucked away in the very front of the hull, has awakened the massive engine. The sound is a deep, resonant purr that travels up through the metal floor plates, vibrating through the soles of their heavy boots, humming in their bones. It is a comforting sound, a steady, mechanical heartbeat that tells them they are alive, and that it is time to move. Slowly, the great iron procession begins to crawl forward. The road they travel is a marvel of simple, fragile engineering. It is a single, narrow ribbon of dark gray asphalt, raised just a few feet above the surrounding landscape. On either side of this lonely highway, the land drops away into soft, waterlogged fields, deep drainage ditches, and vast expanses of marshy ground. The heavy tanks cannot pull off the road. They cannot spread out across the beautiful, green pastures. They are entirely confined to this singular, elevated path. They must move in a perfect, straight line, one after the other, like a long column of dutiful ants traversing a thin, precarious branch. To look through the driver's narrow glass periscope is to see a world framed in a small, rectangular box. He watches the hypnotic, continuous stretch of the gray road rolling out beneath his treads. The steady, rhythmic clanking of the metal tracks against the asphalt becomes a soothing, monotonous lullaby. Clank, clink, rumble. Clank, clink, rumble. The driver rests his gloved hands lightly on the steering levers. He lets his mind drift backward, floating softly across the English Channel. He remembers driving a delivery truck through the quiet, winding lanes of a small country village, the back filled with glass bottles of milk clinking softly against one another in the dawn light. He remembers the sleepy smiles of the people stepping out onto their porches in their dressing gowns. He uses those gentle memories to anchor his heart, letting the peaceful past guide his heavy, armored present. As the sun begins to climb higher, fighting its way through the pale autumn clouds, the landscape outside the steel walls reveals its breathtaking, melancholy beauty. The ribbon of asphalt winds its way through avenues of towering, ancient poplar trees, their leaves beginning to turn a soft, buttery yellow. The trees stand like tall, quiet sentinels, watching the iron parade pass beneath their branches. In the distance, the wooden blades of old windmills turn with a slow, lazy grace, and different to the urgent, worldly matters unfolding below. The air above the dark canal shimmers with a silvery mist. It is a landscape painted in quiet, muted tones, entirely at odds with the roaring engines and the heavy weapons passing through it. But progress on this single road is agonizingly slow. Because the vehicles cannot pass one another, the entire column is at the mercy of whatever happens at the very front. The tank suddenly shudders and jolts to a complete halt. The engines drop to a low, idling hum. Inside the cabin, the men let out a collective, weary sigh. The waiting has begun again. The hours stretch out, elastic and heavy. They sit in the dim light, listening to the soft, rhythmic ticking of the cooling metal. The radio operator, sitting in a small alcove of wires and dials, turns a dial on his headset, listening to the crackle of static, hoping to pull a familiar voice from the ether. When the static yields nothing but silence, he reaches into the breast pocket of his woolen tunic. He pulls out a small, square envelope, its edges worn soft and feathered from being handled 100 times. He unfolds the single sheet of paper inside with meticulous, reverent care, smoothing the creases across his knee. He tilts the paper to catch the faint beam of light filtering down from the commander's open hatch. It is a letter from his older sister. She writes to tell him that the ivy on the side of their house has turned a brilliant crimson, and that their father has finally fixed the squeaky hinge on the front gate. She tells him that his old dog still waits by the window every afternoon, listening for his footsteps on the path. He reads the words over and over, his lips moving silently in the gloom. He breathes in the scent of the paper, trying to catch the faint, phantom trace of the lavender soap his sister keeps in the writing desk. In this dark, cramped steel box, surrounded by cold iron and the smell of oil, this fragile piece of paper is a window to a brighter, warmer world. It is a tether to his humanity. He reads until he has memorized the gentle slope of her handwriting, finding a deep, welling reservoir of peace in the ordinary, mundane details of a life carrying on without him. Occasionally, the road passes through tiny, clustered hamlets. The heavy tracks rumble over cobblestones, vibrating the windows of the narrow brick houses. The people of these villages stand on their front steps, their faces a mixture of awe, exhaustion, and fragile hope. They watch the tanks roll by, massive beasts of burden carrying the weight of their liberation. The young commander stands up in his turret, the cool autumn breeze washing over his face, clearing the smell of diesel from his lungs. He looks down at a small group of children standing by the side of the road, their clothes patched and their faces thin. He reaches into the canvas bag strapped to the side of his turret and pulls out a brightly colored tin of hard candies. With a gentle, underhand toss, he throws the tin down into the soft grass beside them. He sees the children scramble for it, their faces lighting up with a sudden, beautiful joy as they pry the lid open. A mother looks up at him, placing a hand over her heart, and offers a quiet, dignified nod. The commander smiles back, returning her nod. In that brief, fleeting exchange, passing at 5 miles an hour, a profound connection is made. It is a silent promise. We are here. We will not leave you in the dark. But beneath the quiet moments of connection and the gentle daydreaming, a heavy, unspoken anxiety rests in the hearts of every man in the column. They know why they are on this road. They know about the thousands of boys who fell from the sky like silk snowflakes just days before. They know that those airborne brothers are waiting for them, holding tiny pockets of ground in the dense woods and distant towns, waiting for the heavy armor to arrive. They are separated by miles of unknown territory, connected only by this single, fragile ribbon of asphalt. The tank crews feel the invisible pull of that connection. It is a physical sensation, a tight string pulling at their chests. Every time the column halts, every time a truck breaks down and blocks the road, the men in the tanks feel a desperate, quiet agony. They tap their fingers anxiously against the steel walls. They whisper quiet prayers to the empty air. Hold on, they murmur into the dark. Just hold on. We are coming. They are carrying the immense burden of being someone else's hope, and they are terrified of being too late. They push the great machines as hard as they dare, urging the massive engines forward, willing the treads to grip the asphalt faster. The drivers lean closer to their periscopes, their eyes burning with the strain of watching the unchanging road, driven by a deep, fierce love for men they have never even met, but whom they consider brothers in the deepest sense of the word. As the afternoon slowly bleeds into evening, the sky above the flat landscape turns a bruised, watercolor purple. The mist begins to rise again from the canals, creeping slowly over the edges of the road, wrapping the lower halves of the tanks in a pale, ghostly shroud. The poplars cast long, fading shadows across the asphalt. The light inside the cabin fades completely, leaving only the soft, comforting amber glow of the instrument panel. The commander drops back down into his seat, closing the heavy steel hatch above him with a soft, definitive thud. The world shrinks back down to the small, metallic room. The men settle back into their tight, folded postures, leaning against one another as the tank continues its slow, relentless crawl into the gathering night. The rhythm of the treads changes tone as the evening air cools, becoming a deeper, heavier clank against the road. The driver stares into the darkness, guided only by the small, hooded taillights of the tank directly in front of him, two tiny, red embers glowing softly in the mist. They are a mechanical caravan lost in a sea of shadow, entirely alone on the long highway. Yet, there is a beautiful, quiet resilience in their movement. They do not stop. They do not turn around. They press forward into the unknown, their hearts filled with the letters of home, the smiles of the children on the cobblestones, and the desperate, unwavering hope of reaching the boys waiting in the dark. The great iron machines rumble on, singing their heavy, mechanical lullaby to the empty fields, following the ribbon of asphalt as it gently, quietly, carries them deeper into the heart of the autumn night. A single, pale willow leaf spirals down to touch the dark, rushing surface of the water, carried swiftly away into the gray and deepening mist. There is a profound, heavy quiet resting on the muddy banks of the great river. This water, wide and cold, does not care for the troubles of the world. It simply flows, a vast, indifferent ribbon of deep slate and churning gray, moving with a heavy, unstoppable momentum toward the sea. The autumn fog has settled low over the surface, curling in thick, damp tendrils that mask the opposite shore, turning the world into a soft, hazy painting of shadows and pale light. The air here smells of wet reeds, of turned earth, and of the deep, ancient chill of the riverbed. Crouched in the soft, yielding mud along the water's edge are the young men who fell from the sky just days ago. They are no longer the crisp, clean soldiers who sat in the warm English sunlight. The pristine canvas of their uniforms is now stained with the dark, heavy soil of the fields. Their boots are soaked through with the cold dew of the meadows. They huddle together in the tall, swaying reeds, pressing their shoulders against the damp earthen banks, trying to find whatever small warmth they can in the shelter of the shallow divots. They are so incredibly tired. You can see it in the slow, deliberate way they blink their eyes against the biting wind. You can see it in the gentle slump of their backs as they rest their heavy helmets against their knees. Yet, there is a beautiful, quiet stillness to them right now. They are not moving. They are simply waiting. They are caught in the agonizing, stretching pause between the safety of the earth they hold and the perilous, watery unknown they must cross. A few yards away, resting in the slick mud, are the boats. When the men first laid eyes on these vessels, a collective, silent disbelief washed over them. They are not great steel landing craft. They are not armored, or strong, or built to withstand the fierce currents of a massive, sweeping river. They are nothing more than fragile shells of thin wood and stretched canvas. They look like fragile toys left behind in the rain. The canvas is rough and damp, smelling faintly of mildew and old storage. The wooden paddles are flat, clumsy things, heavy and awkward in their cold hands. The men look at these frail boats, and they look out at the vast, swirling expanse of the dark river, and they understand exactly what is being asked of them. There is no anger in their eyes. There is no loud, dramatic protest. There is only a quiet, solemn swallowing of fear. They know that on the other side of this misty expanse, their brothers are waiting in the dark. And so, they will step into these canvas shells. They will trust the thin wood, because they have no other choice, and because their love for the men waiting in the distance is far stronger than their fear of the water. In the heavy, waiting silence, the men turn inward. They find small, dry patches of earth beneath the roots of the willow trees. They reach into their deep pockets with stiff, freezing fingers, pulling out tiny, precious things. A stub of a pencil, its lead worn dull and flat. A small, creased notepad. The torn, blank inside of a cardboard ration box. Anything that can hold a memory. A young boy, shivering slightly in his damp woolen coat, rests his makeshift paper against the smooth, curved wood of his rifle stock. He brings the pencil to the paper, but for a long time, he doesn't write. He simply stares into the swirling gray fog over the river. He is trying to summon the exact shade of his wife's eyes. He is trying to remember the way her laugh sounded across their small kitchen when she dropped a spoon on the linoleum floor. When the memory finally comes, wrapping around his heart like a warm blanket, he begins to write. His handwriting is shaky, altered by the cold and the exhaustion. He does not write of the wide river, or the fragile canvas, or the cold that seeps into his bones. He writes that he is eating well. He writes that the Dutch countryside is beautiful, full of windmills and polite farmers. He asks her to make sure the pipes don't freeze in the winter. He tells her, in simple, unadorned words, that she is the very best thing that ever happened to him. He writes the words "I love you" with a heavy, deliberate pressure, wanting the pencil lead to sink so deeply into the paper that the feeling can never be erased. All down the muddy bank, these quiet confessions are taking place. It is a symphony of silent, desperate love. They are pouring their entire souls into these tiny, folded squares of paper. When they are finished, they fold the notes carefully, pressing the creases flat with cold thumbs. They do not put these letters back into their own pockets. Instead, they turn to the few men who have been ordered to stay behind, the men who will guard the banks and manage the supplies. A soldier hands his folded ration wrapper to a friend staying on the shore. He doesn't say a word. He just presses the paper into his friend's palm and holds his gaze for a long, heavy second. The friend nods slowly, taking the paper with complete reverence. He slips it gently into his own breast pocket, right over his heart. It is the most sacred trust one human being can offer another. It is the safekeeping of a final whisper, just in case the river decides to keep the messenger. To pass the time, they offer each other small, beautiful mercies. A medic, his hands stained with iodine and mud, moves quietly among the reeds. He kneels beside a boy who is shivering violently. The medic doesn't offer medicine, for he has very little left. Instead, he unbuttons his own heavy coat and drapes it over the boy's trembling shoulders, tucking the collar up gently around his neck. The boy looks up, his eyes wide and deeply grateful, and whispers a soft thank you. The medic simply smiles, a tired, warm expression, and pats the boy's helmet before moving on to the next shadow in the mud. Two men, huddled beneath the low branches of a bush, share a single cigarette. They cup their hands tightly around the small white paper, hiding the tiny orange glow from the world. One takes a deep, slow drag, letting the warm smoke fill his lungs, before passing it carefully to the other. They do not speak. The simple act of sharing, the warmth of fingers brushing against one another in the damp cold, speaks volumes. It is a quiet declaration that they are in this together, bound by an invisible, unbreakable thread of brotherhood. A man softly hums a tune from a radio show back home, a sweet, melancholic melody that drifts on the river breeze. The man next to him closes his eyes and leans his head back against the dirt, letting the song carry him away from the damp earth, floating him back to a living room with a crackling fire and a dog sleeping on the rug. They are holding onto these fragments of their normal lives with a fierce, quiet desperation. These memories are their anchors in the swirling mist. Slowly, the pale gray light of the afternoon begins to fade into the deeper, heavier purple of early evening. The fog over the water seems to thicken, rising up to swallow the far bank entirely. The river sounds louder now, the water lapping hungrily at the muddy shores. A gentle murmur moves down the line. It is not a shouted command. It is a soft, shifting whisper that travels from ear to ear, rustling through the reeds like the wind. It is time. The men stand up. Their joints pop and ache from the cold, but they do not complain. They move to the canvas boats. They do not look at the frail wood anymore. They look only at one another. They bend down, their gloved hands gripping the rough wooden rails. With a synchronized, heavy heave, they lift the boats from the mud. They walk slowly toward the water's edge. Their boots sink deep into the cold, squelching clay. With every step, the reality of the crossing presses heavier upon them, but no one stops. No one turns back. They reach the edge, and the icy water of the Val spills over the tops of their leather boots, sending a shocking, breathtaking chill up their legs. They wade in, pushing the canvas shells out into the current. When the water reaches their knees, they swing themselves up and over the wooden sides, tumbling softly into the damp bottoms of the boats. They reach for the heavy, flat paddles. They do not look back at the shore. They do not look back at the men standing in the mud, holding their folded letters in their pockets. They face forward, staring into the impenetrable gray fog. With a slow, united rhythm, they dip their wooden paddles into the dark water. The sound is incredibly soft. A gentle splash. A quiet dripping. The canvas boats glide forward, slipping away from the solid earth and out into the terrifying, rushing embrace of the river. Within seconds, the fog wraps around them like a heavy, gray blanket. The men on the shore strain their eyes, watching the small, fragile silhouettes grow fainter and fainter. Soon, they are entirely gone. The boats, and the quiet, brave boys inside them, have dissolved into the mist. They are just shadows on the Val now, floating silently across the cold water, propelled by the heavy, rhythmic strokes of their wooden paddles, carrying their quiet fears and their fierce, beautiful love into the waiting dark. The great iron bridge stands silent against the violet sky, a skeleton of steel reaching across a river that knows no peace. Here, at the very end of the long, winding road, the world has narrowed down to a few blocks of weathered brick houses and the massive, looming presence of the bridge itself. The structure is a masterpiece of industrial strength, a sprawling arch of cold, gray metal that vaults over the wide, dark waters of the lower Rhine. But tonight, the bridge does not feel like a triumph of engineering. It feels like a lonely island, a solitary span of iron caught in the gathering shadows of an uncertain evening. A small group of young men has taken up residence in the houses that overlook the northern ramp of the bridge. They move through the rooms with a soft, respectful tread, as if they are guests in a home they never intended to visit. The families who lived here have slipped away into the cellars or fled into the surrounding woods, leaving behind the quiet echoes of their lives. In one parlor, a half-finished embroidery hoop sits on a side table. In a kitchen, a wooden bowl holds 3 shriveled apples, their sweet, cider-like scent lingering in the cool air. The soldiers huddle in the upper floors, sitting on the dusty floorboards beneath the sloping eaves of the roofs. They peer out through small, broken window panes, their eyes fixed on the dark silhouette of the bridge. They are so very far from the green fields where they landed in their silk parachutes. They are so very far from the English airfields and the quiet country lanes. They are the furthest point of the great plan, the tip of the spear, and as the light fades, they feel the immense weight of their isolation pressing in on them like the cool evening mist. The air in these rooms is thick with the smell of old wallpaper, brick dust, and the damp, metallic tang of the river. But through the gloom, a new scent begins to drift, a scent so familiar and so deeply comforting that it seems to pull the men back from the edge of their weariness. In a corner of a darkened hallway, a young soldier is kneeling over a small, blue-flame stove. He moves with meticulous care, his large hands shielding the tiny flickering light. He is making tea. It is a simple, humble act, yet in this isolated bridgehead, it feels like a sacred ritual. He listens to the soft, rhythmic hiss of the water beginning to simmer in a blackened tin pot. He watches the steam rise in a delicate, white plume, swirling into the shadows of the ceiling. When the water is ready, he pours it into a collection of mismatched ceramic mugs found in a kitchen cupboard, some painted with delicate blue flowers, others plain and sturdy. He adds a generous spoonful of sugar from a crumpled ration packet, stirring it slowly with a silver spoon he found tucked behind a radiator. The clink of the spoon against the ceramic is the only sound in the hallway, a tiny, musical note that seems to push back the heavy silence of the city outside. He carries the mugs to his brothers, stepping carefully over the debris of the broken house. As he hands a warm cup to the man sitting by the window, their fingers brush against the heated clay. For a moment, the war vanishes. There is only the warmth of the tea spreading through their cold palms, the sweet steam softening their faces, and the quiet, shared comfort of a moment's peace. They sip the liquid slowly, letting the warmth travel down into their chests, chasing away the deep, persistent chill of the river. "Tastes like home," one whispers, his voice barely audible. The man beside him nods, his eyes fixed on the steam rising from his mug. He isn't looking at the iron bridge anymore. In the swirling white vapor, he sees the face of his father sitting in his favorite armchair by the fire. He sees the way the golden light of the hearth used to dance across the spines of the books on the shelves. He remembers the quiet ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway, a steady, rhythmic heartbeat that meant the world was safe and whole. He holds onto that memory with a fierce, quiet desperation, using it to anchor his heart. Against the gathering dark. Outside, the city of Arnhem is a landscape of long, stretching shadows. The tall, narrow houses stand like silent sentinels, their windows dark and empty like sightless eyes. The wind whistles through the girders of the bridge, a low, melancholy moan that sounds like the river itself is grieving. The water below is a deep, impenetrable black, swirling around the massive stone pillars with a heavy, relentless power. The men in the bridgehead are waiting. They are waiting for the sound of the tanks, the heavy, mechanical roar that will tell them the rescue force has finally arrived. They strain their ears, listening to every rustle of the wind, every creak of the old wooden floorboards, hoping to catch the distant rumble of the iron column. But the night offers only the soft, rhythmic lapping of the river and the distant, muffled thuds of conflict elsewhere in the woods. In the attic of a house closest to the bridge, a young medic is sitting on a pile of discarded blankets. He isn't sleeping. He is writing in a small, leather-bound journal, his pencil moving softly across the page by the light of a single, guttering candle. He writes about the men around him, not as soldiers, but as people. He writes about the way the sergeant shares his last bit of chocolate with the youngest private. He writes about the man who spent an hour fixing a broken toy he found in the rubble, hoping to leave it for the child who will eventually return to this house. He writes of the quiet resilience he sees in their eyes, a resolve that isn't born of bravado or anger, but of a deep, abiding love for one another. They stay because they promise to hold the way. They stay because they know that if they leave, the path for their brothers will be lost. It is a quiet, everyday heroism, found in the steady gaze of a friend and the gentle squeeze of a hand in the dark. We are tired, he writes, the candle flame dancing in his eyes. But we are not alone. As long as there is tea in the pot and a brother by your side, the darkness cannot win. The candle flickers and dies, leaving the room in a thick, velvety blackness. The medic closes his journal and tucks it safely into his tunic. He leans his head back against the brick chimney, feeling the rough, cool texture against his skin. He lets his breathing fall into a slow, rhythmic pattern, matching the breathing of the men around him. In the dark, they are a single, collective heart, beating in defiance of the isolation. Down by the riverbank, the mist begins to rise, curling around the base of the iron bridge like a pale, ghostly shroud. The bridge looks even larger now, a magnificent, terrifying giant of steel that seems to reach all the way to the stars. The men look out at it, and they feel a strange, melancholy affection for the cold metal. It is the reason they are here. It is the prize they have been asked to hold. And though it is made of unfeeling iron, it has become this shared purpose, the thing that binds them together in this lonely corner of the world. A soldier reaches into his pocket and pulls out a small, silver pocket watch. He doesn't open it to check the time. The time no longer belongs to the sun or the moon. He simply rubs the smooth, cool metal with his thumb, feeling the intricate engravings of vines and flowers. It was a gift from his grandfather, a man who had seen his own share of long, dark nights. The soldier remembers his grandfather's voice, a low, rumbling growl that always softened when he told stories of home. The night is long, lad, he used to say, but the sun has never failed to find its way back to the meadows. The soldier holds the watch tight, drawing a quiet strength from the cold silver. He looks over at his friend, who has fallen into a light, twitching sleep against a crate of supplies. He reaches out and gently pulls a corner of a stray blanket over his friend's shoulders, tucking it in to keep out the draft. It is a small moment of kindness, a tiny flick of light in the vast shadow of the bridgehead. The darkness is absolute now. The violet sky has turned to a deep, starless indigo. The city is a world of silhouettes and secrets. But in the houses overlooking the bridge, the quiet resolve remains. They have fortified their hearts as much as they have fortified the windows. They have found warmth in the shared mugs of tea, and they have found courage in the silent presence of their brothers. They are the guardians of the lonely span of iron. They are the small, flickering lights at the very end of the world. As the river flows beneath them, carrying the fallen leaves toward the sea, they settle into the long, stretching hours of the night. They do not know what the morning will bring. They do not know if the tanks will appear on the horizon or if the mist will hide them forever. But for now, in this breathless, beautiful pause, they are simply together. They are safe in the sanctuary of their brotherhood, wrapped in the quiet comfort of their shared memories and the lingering warmth of the tea. Let us leave them there, huddling in the shadows of the old Dutch houses, watching the great iron bridge as it sleeps in the mist, holding onto the fragile, beautiful hope that even the longest night eventually gives way to the dawn. The ancient pines of the woodland stand tall and silent, their long, dark shadows reaching out like protective arms over a world that has grown small and fragile. In this quiet corner of the forest, the air is thick with the scent of damp earth, crushed needles, and the faint, sweet perfume of late-blooming heather. The ground is a carpet of soft, rusty red and deep amber leaves, muffling the sound of footsteps until they are nothing more than a gentle rustle in the breeze. Here, amidst the towering trunks and the tangled thickets, a strange and beautiful stillness has taken root. It is a sanctuary, a small pocket of peace carved out from the edges of a great and gathering storm. Dotted among the trees are the grand, old hotels, buildings that once stood as monuments to summer laughter and elegant afternoon teas. Their white-painted balconies and tall, arched windows now look out upon a landscape that has changed beyond recognition. But inside their walls, the spirit of care remains, transformed into something deeper, more sacred, and infinitely more precious. If you were to step across the threshold of one of these quiet houses, leaving the cool forest air behind, you would find yourself in a world of soft, amber light and whispered prayers. The grand ballrooms are empty now, their chandeliers draped in dust, but the heart of the house has moved downward into the cool, stone-walled cellars. Let us descend the wooden stairs, feeling the smooth grain of the banister beneath our hands, and enter the sanctuary of the cellar. The air here is cool and still, smelling of old brick, clean linens, and the sharp, clean scent of antiseptic. The light comes from a scattered collection of flickering lanterns and guttering candles, casting long, dancing shadows against the whitewashed walls. The ceiling is low and arched, creating a sense of being tucked away in a safe, hidden burrow, far beneath the reach of the world's troubles. On the floor, resting on soft piles of hay and thick, woolen blankets, are the young men. They are the ones who fell from the sky, the ones who carried the weight of a continent on their youthful shoulders. Now, they are still. Their faces are pale in the lantern light, their breathing slow and rhythmic, a soft chorus of life that fills the quiet room. They are no longer soldiers bound by duty, they are merely boys, tired and far from home, seeking the comfort of a gentle hand. Moving among them are the medics. These are the quiet heroes of the woodland sanctuary. They move with a slow, effortless grace, their boots making no sound on the stone floor. They do not wear the fierce expressions of warriors. Their faces are softened by a profound and tireless compassion. Their hands, though stained with the work of the day, are incredibly gentle. They touch a forehead to check for fever. They adjust a pillow made from a folded tunic. They offer a sip of water from a tin cup with the same reverence one might offer a rare and precious wine. In the corner of the cellar, a young medic kneels beside a boy who is shivering in his sleep. The medic doesn't reach for a bandage or a needle. Instead, he reaches into his own pocket and pulls out a small, silver harmonica. He brings it to his lips and begins to play a melody so soft it is almost a whisper. It is a slow, lilting tune, a song of rolling hills and quiet meadows from a home they both share across the sea. The music drifts through the cellar like a physical warmth, wrapping around the sleeping boys, smoothing the lines of worry from their brows. Under the spell of the song, the shivering boy grows still, his breathing evening out into a deep, restorative slumber. Across the room, a Dutch woman from the village has come to help. She wears a simple, dark dress and a white apron that catches the flickering light. She has lost her own home to the storm, but she has found a new one here, in the service of others. She sits on a low wooden stool, holding the hand of a soldier who is drifting in and out of wakefulness. She does not speak his language, and he does not speak hers, but the language of the heart is universal. She hums a low, rhythmic lullaby, a psalm her own mother used to sing to her when the winter winds howled against the shutters. It is a sound of pure, unadulterated safety. As she hums, she gently strokes the back of the soldier's hand with her thumb, a rhythmic, soothing motion that anchors him to the present, to the warmth, to the knowledge that he is not alone. For a moment, the soldier opens his eyes and sees her. He doesn't see a stranger in a foreign land. He sees the face of every mother who has ever kept watch through the night. He offers a small, weak smile, a silent thank you that transcends all borders and all conflicts. In the quiet intervals between their work, the medics find moments to reconnect with their own humanity. One man sits by a solitary candle, a small stack of letters resting on his knee. He is not reading his own mail, he is reading for a friend whose eyes are covered by a soft white bandage. He reads slowly, savoring every word, letting the images of a distant life bloom in the dim cellar. He reads about a garden where the sunflowers are growing tall, about a new puppy that likes to chew on old shoes, about the way the light looks on the river on a Sunday morning. The boy with the bandaged eyes listens with his whole body, a small, peaceful smile playing on his lips. To him, the medic's voice is a bridge, a golden thread that leads him out of the darkness of the cellar and back to the warmth of a sun-drenched kitchen. He can almost smell the baking bread, he can almost feel the soft fur of the puppy. "Read it again," the boy whispers, his voice thick with emotion. And the medic, though his own eyes are burning with exhaustion, smiles and begins again at the very top. "My dearest," he begins, his voice a steady, comforting anchor in the dark. Outside the thick stone walls, the woods are growing colder. The wind picks up, whistling through the empty balconies of the hotels, rattling the skeletal branches of the ancient oaks. The Red Cross flags, fashioned from white bedsheets and scraps of red fabric, flutter softly in the breeze, their presence a silent plea for mercy amidst the shadows. The pocket of woodland is shrinking, the world outside pressing closer, but inside the cellar, the sanctuary holds firm. There is a profound resilience in this quiet care. It is a defiance of the darkness, a declaration that even when the world is at its loudest and its most chaotic, the softest touch and the quietest word still hold the greatest power. The medics and the nurses do not look at the maps. They do not worry about the bridges or the roads. Their entire world is the person lying in front of them. They measure their success in the lowering of a fever, the steadying of a pulse, and the small, beautiful moment when a person in pain finally finds the grace of sleep. Occasionally, a small act of heroism ripples through the sanctuary, acts that will never be recorded in history books, but will be etched forever in the memories of those who were there. A medic gives up his own meager ration of chocolate to a boy who hasn't eaten in 2 days. A nurse tears her own petticoat to make a soft, clean dressing when the supplies run low. They move through the exhaustion and the fear with a quiet, steady resolve, their spirits buoyed by the simple, beautiful necessity of being there for one another. As the night deepens, the forest becomes a cathedral of shadows. The moonlight filters through the pine needles, casting a silver, ethereal glow over the mossy ground. The world seems to be holding its breath, honoring the quiet work being done beneath the earth. In the cellar, the lanterns are dimmed to save the precious oil. The space is filled with a soft, warm gloom that feels like the very heart of the world. The medics sit on the floor, leaning their heads against the cool stone walls, taking their turn to rest for just a few minutes. They listen to the soft breathing of the boys, the occasional murmur of a dream, and the rhythmic drip of water somewhere in the shadows. It is a moment of profound, breathtaking peace. In this small pocket of woodland, surrounded by the vast and moving shadows of history, they have created a home. They have found a way to be brothers in the deepest sense of the word. They have turned a cold cellar into a sanctuary of the soul, a place where the moans of the weary are met with the music of the heart and the gentle, tireless touch of love. Let us linger here for a moment, in the soft amber light of the cellar, feeling the warmth of the blankets and the steady, quiet pulse of life. Let us honor the hands that heal and the voices that soothe. Even as the wind continues to rustle the pine needles above, and the shadows grow long across the heather, the light in the sanctuary remains. It is a small light, a flickering candle in a vast and ancient forest, but it is enough to guide the way through the night. It is a light that reminds us that no matter how deep the shadow, the spirit of kindness can never be extinguished. It remains, tucked safely away among the trees, a beautiful and enduring testament to the quiet, resilient power of the human heart. The boys sleep on, cradled in the soft lullabies and the gentle prayers of those who watch over them. The medic puts away his harmonica, the last notes fading into the stone walls. The nurse rests her head on her hand, her eyes never leaving her charge. The woodland sanctuary is still. Wrapped in the scent of pine and the promise of grace, the world settles into a deep, protective quiet, waiting for the first light of the morning to filter through the ancient, silent trees. A tiny, amber flame dances against the cold stone of a cellar wall, a flickering heartbeat in the deep, protective silence of the earth. Beneath the narrow streets of the Dutch towns, where the red-tiled roofs lean close together as if to whisper secrets, there is a hidden world. It is a world of low ceilings, rough-hewn timber, and the scent of the soil itself. While the autumn wind rustles the leaves of the poplars above, down here, time seems to slow to the pace of a steady, rhythmic breath. The air is cool and still, carrying the faint, earthy perfume of stored potatoes, shriveled apples from the last harvest, and the damp, familiar smell of old wool. This is the sanctuary of the cellar. It is a place built for the quiet storage of the earth's bounty, but tonight, it holds something far more precious. Tucked into the corners, resting on sacks of grain or leaning against sturdy wooden crates, are the guests of the shadows. They are the boys who fell from the clouds, their silk parachutes now nothing more than memories of the sky. They are the weary travelers of the long, gray highway, seeking a moment of respite from the weight of their journey. In the center of the room, sitting on a low wooden stool, is the keeper of this secret light. She is a mother, a grandmother, a daughter of this soil. Her hands are worn, the skin mapped with the lines of a lifetime of hard work and quiet endurance. She moves with a soft, unhurried grace, her heavy skirts whispering against the stone floor. She adjusts the glass chimney of an old oil lantern, turning the wick down until the light is nothing more than a soft, golden glow that barely reaches the edges of the room. She knows that in this world, light is both a blessing and a danger. She looks toward the corner where a young soldier sits. He is so young that the charcoal smudges on his face look like the marks of a child playing at being a man. He is shivering, not from the cold of the cellar, but from the immense, crushing weight of the unknown. She does not speak his language, and he does not know the melodies of her heart, but she sees him. She sees the boy behind the uniform. She sees the son who is missed at a table thousands of miles away. Without a word, she rises and moves to a heavy iron pot resting on a small stove. She ladles out a bowl of soup, a simple, thin broth made from the last of the garden's carrots and a few precious potatoes. It is not much, but she offers it with the reverence of a feast. As she hands him the warm ceramic bowl, her fingers brush against his. Her hand is warm and steady, his is cold and trembling. In that brief, silent touch, a bridge is built. You are safe here, the touch says. Under my roof, you are a son. The young soldier takes the bowl, the steam rising to soften his tired features. He sips the soup slowly, letting the warmth spread through his chest, chasing away the shadows that have gathered in his soul. He looks around the small, dim room. He sees a young girl sitting in the lap of her father, her eyes wide and dark, reflecting the tiny flame of the lantern. She is holding a rag doll tightly to her chest, her small thumb tucked into her mouth. The father rests his chin on the girl's head, his eyes closed, his arms a fortress of love around her. In this basement, the roles of protector and protected have become blurred. The soldier carries the tools of a vast conflict, yet here, he is the one being shielded by the quiet courage of a family who has everything to lose. They have opened their doors and their hearts to a stranger, risking their lives for the simple, profound reason that it is the right thing to do. It is a heroism that does not shout, it is a heroism that whispers in the dark, that shares its last crust of bread, that offers a dry corner to a cold and lonely boy. The soldier reaches into his pocket and pulls out a small, crumpled photograph. He holds it out toward the lantern light so the woman can see. It is a picture of a house with a white fence and a large, spreading tree in the front yard. He points to himself in the picture, then to the house. The woman leans in, her face illuminated by the amber glow. She smiles, a slow, beautiful expression that crinkles the corners of her eyes. She understands. She reaches out and touches the photograph gently, then points toward the ceiling, toward the west, and then presses her hand to her heart. She is telling him that his home is still there, that the love he left behind is waiting, and that she will help him stay safe until he can walk through that white gate once more. The silence of the cellar is deep, but it is not empty. It is filled with the unspoken prayers of a dozen hearts. Occasionally, a low, muffled thud vibrates through the earth, a reminder of the storm that rages in the world above. When the ground trembles, the mother instinctively reaches for her child, and the soldier's hand drifts toward his side. But then, their eyes meet in the lantern light. They see the shared fear, and in seeing it, they find the strength to push it back. They choose to focus on the small, beautiful things, the warmth of the soup, the soft rhythm of a child's breathing, the steady, comforting glow of the oil lamp. A young man in the corner, another guest of the family, is writing a letter by the faint light. He rests his paper on a crate of winter pears, the sweet, earthy scent of the fruit filling his senses. He writes to his sister, his pencil moving softly across the page. He doesn't tell her about the cold or the darkness. He tells her about the kindness of the people who have taken him in. He describes the way the grandmother tucked a heavy wool blanket around his feet. He tells her that even in the middle of a great shadow, there are people who carry lanterns in their hearts. He folds the letter into a tiny square and tucks it into his boot, a message to the future, a testament to the goodness he found beneath the earth. Outside, the night is long and the shadows are vast. The narrow streets of the town are empty, the wind whistling through the eaves of the houses. But in this cellar, and in dozens like it across the land, the light remains. It is a fragile thing, a single flame against the enormous dark, but it is unyielding. The family and their guests begin to settle in for the night. They find places on the floor, leaning against one another for warmth. The mother takes a large, heavy shawl and spreads it over the legs of two soldiers resting near the stairs. She then moves to the lantern. She doesn't blow it out. She leaves the wick burning at its lowest possible point, a tiny, golden star that will watch over them through the long hours of the darkness. As she lies down beside her husband and child, she listens to the breathing of the room. It is a symphony of resilience. The soft snores of the exhausted men, the gentle sighs of the sleeping child, the rhythmic creak of the house above. They are bound together now, tied by a thread of shared fate that is stronger than any army. They are a small, quiet island of humanity in a sea of uncertainty. The lantern light flickers, casting a long, dancing shadow of a wooden chair against the stone wall. The shadow looks like a tall, protective guardian watching over the sleepers. The air in the cellar grows even stiller, even more peaceful. The weight of the world seems to lift, if only for a few hours, allowing the weary to dream of sunlit meadows and open doors. In this hidden sanctuary, the ordinary has become extraordinary. A bowl of soup has become a holy communion. A wool blanket has become a shield. A shared glance in the dark has become a promise of a better world. These are the stories that the stones of the cellar will remember. They will remember the scent of the pears and the warmth of the lantern. They will remember the tears that were shed in silence and the smiles that were given in hope. Let us leave them now, safe in the comforting dark of the earth. Let us watch the tiny flame of the lantern as it holds back the night, a golden beacon of kindness that refuses to be extinguished. The autumn wind may howl, and the shadows may grow long, but here, beneath the cobblestones, the light of the human spirit burns steady and true. Wrapped in the scent of the harvest and the prayers of the faithful, the cellar remains a sanctuary, a quiet, beautiful home for those who wait for the dawn. The lantern glows. The children sleep. The mothers watch. And in the deep, velvet silence of the basement, the world finds its way back to peace, one whispered word and one small act of kindness at a time. The light is small, but it is enough. It is more than enough. It is the promise that no matter how deep the cellar, the morning will always find its way to the door. A soft, silver veil descends from the heavens, turning the vibrant world into a quiet, watercolor dream of gray and mist. The bright, golden light of the early September days has faded, replaced by a sky that seems to have grown heavy with its own sorrow. It is a slow, rhythmic rain that falls now, not a storm of anger or violence, but a steady, persistent weeping that blankets the Dutch countryside in a cool, damp embrace. The tall poplar trees bow their heads under the weight of the water, their leaves shivering as each drop finds its way to the mossy earth below. The wide canals, once mirrors for the blue sky, are now textured with 1,000 tiny, concentric circles, a liquid lace constantly weaving and unweaving itself upon the surface. In the shallow cradles they have dug into the dark soil, the young men huddle together. The vibrant green of their uniforms has deepened to a heavy, sodden olive, and the scent of wet wool and damp earth clings to them like a second skin. They have pulled their collars up high against their necks, tucking their chins into the warmth of their coats. The rain makes a soft, rhythmic music as it taps against their metal helmets, a sound like 1,000 tiny silver hammers striking a distant anvil. It is a hypnotic, lulling sound that fills the silence of the woods, a gentle percussion that speaks of endurance and the slow passage of time. They look up, their eyes searching the thick, low-hanging clouds. They are looking for the white and colored silk that usually blossoms in the air, the beautiful parachutes that carry the bread, the coffee, and the letters from across the sea. But today, the sky is empty. The great birds of the air are grounded, their wings heavy with the same mist that blankets the fields. The relief they were promised feels as far away as a half-remembered dream. There is a profound, aching loneliness in the gray light, a feeling of being caught in a world where the horizon has shrunk to the edge of the nearest thicket. But when the world outside turns gray and cold, the world inside begins to glow with a different kind of light. In the quiet intervals between the falling drops, the men turn toward the only sanctuary they have left, the sanctuary of memory. A young man, his hands tucked deep into his armpits for warmth, closes his eyes and lets the gray woods dissolve. In his mind, he is walking through a kitchen door in a small town in the American Midwest. He can feel the sudden, delicious burst of warmth from the wood-burning stove. He can smell the sharp, sweet scent of cinnamon and baking apples. He hears the rhythmic ticking of the clock on the mantel and the soft, muffled sound of his mother's slippers on the linoleum floor. To him, the rain on his helmet becomes the sound of a summer shower against the tin roof of the porch, a sound that always meant it was time to come inside and rest. Beside him, a friend is carefully shielding a small, damp piece of paper. It is a letter from his sister, written in a sprawling, energetic hand that seems to defy the gloom of the forest. The ink has begun to feather at the edges where the dampness has crept in, turning the words into soft, blue clouds. But he doesn't need the ink to be clear. He has read these lines so many times that they are etched into the very fabric of his soul. She writes about the new puppy that keeps falling over its own oversized paws. She writes about the dance at the town hall and the way the moonlight looked on the lake. As he reads, the cold in his bones seems to retreat, pushed back by the steady, radiant heat of a love that knows no distance. There is a quiet, beautiful heroism in these small moments of resilience. It is found in the man who reaches into his pocket and finds a single, dry cigarette, carefully saved for a moment just like this. He doesn't light it for himself. Instead, he passes it to the boy sitting next to him, whose teeth are chattering in the damp chill. They huddle under a shared piece of canvas, the small, orange glow of the match illuminating their tired faces for a heartbeat, a tiny sun in the middle of a gray ocean. It is found in the medic who moves through the mist, not with bandages or medicine, but with a collection of dry socks he has somehow managed to keep tucked inside his tunic. He kneels in the mud, his movements slow and deliberate, helping a friend change into the rough, warm wool. The touch of one hand against another, the simple act of providing a small measure of comfort, is a prayer in itself. They do not speak of the bridges or the roads or the grand designs of the generals. They speak of the taste of a cold beer on a Friday night, the weight of a fishing rod in their hand, and the way the heather smells when the sun finally breaks through the clouds. Down in the village cellars, the Dutch families listen to the rain, too. To them, the tears of the gray sky are shared sorrow. They sit in the dim light of their lanterns, the sound of the water dripping from the eaves echoing the steady beat of their own hearts. A grandmother sits in a wooden chair, her knitting needles clicking a soft, rhythmic accompaniment to the rain. She is making a scarf of bright, defiant orange, a splash of color hidden in the shadows. Every stitch is a quiet act of defiance, a way of saying that the gray will not last forever. She shares a piece of dark, hard bread with a soldier who has sought shelter in her doorway, gesturing for him to sit near the small, guttering candle. In the shared silence, they find a profound connection. They are both waiting for the clouds to part. They are both children of the same weeping sky. The rain has a way of stripping away everything that isn't essential. The noise of the world is muffled, the colors are muted, and the frantic energy of the earlier days has settled into a deep, heavy stillness. It is a time for the everyday heroism of simply staying kind. It is the man who tells a joke, his voice a soft, raspy whisper, just to see the corner of his friend's mouth twitch into a smile. It is the sergeant who walks the line in the dark, placing a steady, fatherly hand on the shoulder of every shivering boy, letting them know that he is there, that they are not alone in the mist. They find solace in the very things that once seemed ordinary. They find it in the rhythmic breathing of the man sleeping beside them. They find it in the way the raindrops hang like perfect, translucent pearls from the tips of the pine needles. They find it in the shared silence that says more than words ever could. The gray sky has taken away their sunshine and their supplies, but it has given them a profound, unshakable brotherhood. They are bound together by the damp, by the cold, and by the shared interior light of their memories. As the evening deepens, the rain turns into a fine, ghostly mist that clings to the heather. The woods become a cathedral of shadows, the ancient trees standing like silent sentinels in the gloom. The world feels infinitely old, as if this rain has been falling since the beginning of time. But even in the heart of the dampest thicket, there is a sense of quiet, enduring peace. The men have found a way to carry their homes with them. They have built fires in their hearts that the rain cannot touch. A young soldier leans his head back against the rough bark of an oak tree. He watches a single drop of water travel down a spider's web, a tiny, liquid jewel catching the faint, silver light of the moon. He thinks of his father's garden back in England, and how the roses always smelled sweetest after a heavy downpour. He breathes in the scent of the wet pine and the turned earth, finding a strange, melancholy beauty in the moment. He isn't afraid of the gray sky anymore. He sees it as a veil, a temporary covering that is holding the world in a protective, watery sleep. The night is long, and the dampness is pervasive, but the resilience of the human spirit is a magnificent thing. It is a flame that flickers but does not go out. It is a song that continues even when the music is soft. In the quiet pockets of the forest, and the dim corners of the cellars, the story of Market Garden continues, not in the roar of engines or the clash of steel, but in the whispered memories of home and the gentle, tireless kindness of strangers. Let us listen to the rain for a moment longer. Let us feel the cool mist on our faces and the weight of the damp wool on our shoulders. In the tears of the gray sky, there is a profound lesson about the beauty of endurance. It is the story of men who found light in the middle of a shadow, who found warmth in the middle of a chill, and who found each other in the middle of the mist. The world settles into a deep, rhythmic quiet. The raindrops continue their steady tap-tap-tap on the helmets, a lullaby for the weary. The memories of home stay bright and warm, tucked safely away like treasures in the dark. Wrapped in the soft, silver shroud of the autumn rain, the soldiers and the families sleep a light, watchful sleep, waiting for the clouds to break, waiting for the morning, and holding tightly to the beautiful, persistent hope that the sun is still there, just on the other side of the gray. A single, golden leaf tumbles from a branch, caught in a wind that carries the scent of a home half a world away. In the quiet, pre-dawn hours on the airfields of England, a group of men stands in the silver light of a fading moon. They move with a grace that is both heavy and light, their boots crunching softly on the dew-dampened grass. These are men who carry the geography of a lost land in the lines of their faces and the depth of their eyes. They speak in a language that sounds like the rustling of dry reeds along a riverbank, soft, sibilant, and filled with a deep, melodic melancholy. For years, they have lived as guests in foreign lands, sleeping in canvas tents and wooden barracks, but tonight, they are preparing for a journey that is more than just a flight over a sea. They are preparing to leap back into the struggle for a dream that has never left them. In their pockets, they carry small, worn-out treasures. A piece of lace from a mother's Sunday dress. A wooden cross carved from a Polish pine. A handful of soil, dried and crumbling, kept in a small silk pouch. To anyone else, these might seem like trifles, but to these men, they are the anchors of their identity. As they check the straps of their heavy packs, they are not just checking their gear, they are touching the physical remnants of a world that was taken from them. They are men of the mist, ghosts of a nation that exists, for now, only in the sanctuary of their hearts. Let us watch them as they board the great transport planes. The engines begin their low, rhythmic hum, a sound that vibrates through the metal floorboards and into the soles of their feet. Inside the cabin, the light is dim and amber, casting long, soft shadows against the curved walls. The men sit in 2 long rows, their knees almost touching, their heads bowed in quiet reflection. They are not talking about the bridges or the maps. They are thinking of the orchards in the Vistula Valley. They are remembering the taste of dark rye bread and the sound of bells ringing out over a snowy square in Warsaw. They are fighting not just for the brothers they have never met across the Rhine, but for the haunting, beautiful memory of a Poland that is free and whole. One young man, with hair the color of autumn wheat, reaches into his tunic and pulls out a pencil. He has no paper, so he writes on the inside of his ration box. His words are simple, written in the beautiful, flowing script of his homeland. He writes to a sister he hasn't seen in 3 years, a girl who may or may not be waiting for him. He tells her that he is flying tonight, and that when he looks out the window, he pretends the clouds are the white eagles of their ancient crest. He tells her that he is not afraid of the fall, because the wind feels like the breath of their ancestors, guiding him home. He folds the cardboard and tucks it away, a message to a ghost, a prayer sent out into the cold, rushing air. The flight is long and hypnotic. The planes move like a great, silver pot of whales through a sea of gray clouds. Below them, the world is a blur of charcoal and slate. The English Channel is a dark, restless expanse, and then the coast of Holland appears, a patchwork of flooded fields and narrow canals, looking like a shattered mirror reflecting a sunlit sky. The mist begins to rise, a thick, white blanket that swallows the landscape, turning the trees and the houses into soft, indistinct shapes. The signal light in the plane changes from a steady red to a vibrant, pulsing green. It is time. The men stand up, the metal clips of their static lines making a soft, rhythmic clinking against the overhead cable. They move toward the open door, where the wind roars with a gentle, persistent voice, calling them into the void. They do not hesitate. They step out into the rushing air, and for a few breathless seconds, they are truly weightless. Then, the silk opens. Thousands of canopies blossom in the gray sky, looking like delicate, falling leaves of gray and green. They drift through the thick, swirling mist, pendulums of humanity swinging beneath clouds of cloth. It is a descent of profound silence. Away from the roar of the engines, the air is still and cool. The mist wraps around them like a soft, wet shroud, muffling all sound. In this white world, there is no war, no border, no distance. There is only the slow, majestic drift toward the earth. They look like a great autumn forest being scattered by a celestial wind, falling gently toward a small village called Driel. Down on the ground, the Dutch earth is waiting. It is soft and marshy, smelling of damp clay and old grass. The men land with a heavy thud, their chutes collapsing over them like tired wings. They crawl out from beneath the silk, their boots sinking into the mud. All around them, the mist is so thick you can barely see 10 feet ahead. Shadows emerge from the whiteness, not enemies, but brothers. They find each other by the sound of their breathing and the soft, whispered passwords of their shared tongue. The village of Driel is a quiet place, a cluster of brick houses and a tall church steeple standing guard over the river. The local people, who have lived in the shadow of fear for so long, watch from their darkened windows. They see the Polish soldiers emerging from the fog like figures from a legend. A Dutch woman, her hair tucked under a dark shawl, steps out onto her porch. She carries a small wooden bucket of fresh water and a handful of apples. She sees a young Polish soldier struggling to free himself from his harness. She walks into the mist, her feet bare on the cold ground, and offers him an apple. The soldier stops. He looks at the fruit, and then at the woman. Her face is lined with the same weariness he feels in his own soul. He takes the apple with a trembling hand and whispers a word of thanks in his own language. She doesn't understand the word, but she understands the feeling. She places a warm, calloused hand on his shoulder, a gesture of absolute, maternal kindness. In that moment, the soldier is no longer an exile in a foreign field. He is a son who has been welcomed home. He eats the apple, and the sweet, crisp juice tastes like the promise of a world where beauty still exists. Across the water of the Rhine, just a few hundred yards away, the sound of the struggle continues. It is a low, rhythmic thumping, like a giant heart beating in the dark. The Polish men look toward the river, their eyes straining against the fog. They know their British brothers are trapped in the woods on the other side, exhausted and waiting. The river is wide, cold, and indifferent, a dark ribbon of water that separates hope from survival. The Polish soldiers gather along the muddy banks. They move with a quiet, fierce resilience. They do not have the boats they were promised, they do not have the heavy tools of the crossing. But they have each other, and they have the haunting memory of their own fallen cities. They sit in the tall, wet reeds, checking their gear by the light of a single, hooded lantern. They share a final cigarette, the small, glowing ember passed from hand to hand like a sacred flame. They speak of the river Vistula, comparing its current to the Rhine, finding comfort in the familiar geography of water. In the deep of the night, a young Polish medic sits by the base of a willow tree, its long branches weeping into the river. He is tending to a comrade who twisted his ankle in the jump. He works with a tenderness that is almost prayerful, wrapping the joint in soft linen. As he works, he hums a folk song, a tune about a girl waiting by a gate for a soldier who is far, far away. The injured man leans his head back against the bark, his eyes closed, the music washing over him like a warm tide. The song is a bridge, more solid than any iron span, connecting this muddy bank in Driel to the cobblestone streets of Lublin and the pine forests of the east. They are the falling leaves, but they are also the seeds of a future they might never see. They fight for the right to speak their own names, to sing their own songs, and to walk on soil that belongs to them. Their bravery is not the loud, clashing kind, it is the quiet, enduring kind that stays awake through the freezing night, watching the mist, waiting for the moment to move. As the first, faint light of dawn begins to filter through the gray shroud, turning the mist into a luminous, pearly white, the men of the Polish brigade stand ready. They look across the water one last time. The river is still dark, the current swirling with a heavy, restless power. But they do not look at the danger. They look at the small, flickering lights on the opposite shore, the signals of their brothers in the woods. They carry the weight of their lost homeland, but they also carry the lightness of their hope. They are exiles, yes, but they are exiles who have found a purpose in the mist. They are the guardians of a dream that can never be extinguished, falling like leaves in autumn only so that the spring might one day return to the lands they love. Let us leave them there for a moment, standing on the muddy banks of Driel, their figures blurred by the fog, their hearts filled with the music of Poland and the resolve of the brave. The mist is cold, the river is wide, and the road ahead is uncertain. But in the quiet of the morning, surrounded by the scent of damp earth and the memory of home, they are not alone. They are part of a brotherhood that spans the world, a constellation of spirits fighting for the light. The wind rustles the reeds. The water laps at the shore. And in the hearts of the men from the lost land, the white eagle begins to soar, rising above the mist, rising above the river, carrying their prayers toward the dawn. A single raindrop slides down a rusted iron rail, joining the great, dark river that carries the weight of 1,000 secrets. The sky over the woods has finally surrendered its last glimmer of light, dissolving into a deep, velvety charcoal. It is not the sharp, cold black of a winter night, but a soft, heavy darkness, thickened by a rain that falls with a steady, rhythmic patience. This rain is a mercy. It falls like a heavy curtain, muffling the world, blurring the edges of the trees, and washing away the sense of a long, weary struggle. It turns the landscape into a watercolor painting where the colors have all run together into shades of slate, indigo, and silver. In the deep shadows of the ancient oaks and the tangled thickets, the young men are moving. They do not move with the sharp, rhythmic precision of a parade. They move with the slow, fluid grace of shadows. They are exhausted, a deep, bone-aching tiredness that goes beyond the muscles and settles into the very soul. They have lived for days in the narrow confines of the earth, their world reduced to a few feet of dirt and the sight of the sky through the leaves. But now, they are rising. They step out of their shallow sanctuaries, their boots sinking softly into the mud. They do not speak. The silence is a sacred thing, a protective bubble that they carry with them as they navigate the winding paths of the forest. To keep this silence, they have done small, clever things, simple acts of quiet resilience. Some have wrapped old, gray woolen rags around their boots, tying them with bits of twine so their footsteps on the gravel paths sound like nothing more than the rustling of dry leaves. Others hold their metal equipment close to their chests, cushioning the steel with their palms so it does not clink against the buckles of their harnesses. As they move toward the water, they reach out for one another. In the absolute dark of the woods, where even the moon is hidden behind the weeping clouds, they cannot see the path. So, they link hands. It is a beautiful, simple chain of humanity. A young man reaches back and finds the hand of the friend behind him. Their fingers lock, cold, wet, and trembling, but the grip is firm. It is an unspoken promise, I am here. I will not let you wander into the dark. Follow the warmth of my palm. They walk this way for miles, a long, winding ribbon of brothers connected by touch. Some are helping the wounded, leaning shoulder to shoulder, their movements synchronized like a slow, swaying dance. A medic, his own eyes heavy with a week of sleeplessness, keeps his hand on the shoulder of a boy whose eyes are covered by a damp, white bandage. He whispers directions into the boy's ear, soft, rhythmic instructions that sound like a lullaby. 2 steps left, now. A small root ahead. Gently, gently. The boy trusts the hand on his shoulder completely, moving through the invisible world with a quiet, heartbreaking courage. They pass the ruins of the grand hotels and the narrow brick houses where they found shelter just days before. The windows are dark now, sightless eyes watching their departure. As they pass, many of the men turn their heads for one last look. They think of the families in the cellars, the mothers who shared their soup, the children who offered them apples, the fathers who sat with them in the candlelight. There is a profound, heavy guilt in the air, a silent apology whispered into the rain. They are leaving, and they are leaving those people behind to face the coming winter. In the quiet of their hearts, the soldiers leave pieces of themselves in those rooms, a memory of a shared smile, a folded letter tucked behind a radiator, a promise to remember the kindness of strangers. The path leads them down a steep, muddy bank toward the rushing sound of the river. The water is a deep, churning indigo, its surface broken by the relentless tapping of the rain. It looks vast and cold, a formidable threshold between the world they have known and the safety of the other side. They gather in the tall, wet grass along the shore, huddling together for warmth. The air smells of wet earth, rotting leaves, and the metallic tang of the river. They sit in the mud, their knees drawn up to their chests, watching the dark shapes of small canvas boats slipping across the water toward them. The boats move like ghosts, their oars muffled with torn strips of cloth to silence the splash. Each time a boat touches the shore with a soft, hollow thud, a few more men rise and step into the swaying craft. Inside the boats, the world becomes even smaller. They sit on the damp floorboards, their shoulders pressed against one another. The only sound is the rhythmic, heavy breathing of the rowers and the soft, liquid swirling of the oars. The men look back at the shore they are leaving. The woods look like a solid wall of blackness, a place that has claimed so many of their dreams. They think of the friends who are not in the boats with them, the boys who remain in the quiet clearings and beneath the pine needles. They leave their hearts with those silent brothers, too, whispering their names into the mist, promising that they will carry their stories back across the sea. A young soldier, sitting in the bow of a boat, reaches over the side and dips his hand into the cold water of the Rhine. He lets the current pull at his fingers, feeling the immense and different power of the river. He thinks of the letters he has written this week, the ones he wasn't sure would ever be mailed. He feels the damp paper against his chest, a lucky charm that has seen him through the dark. He closes his eyes and imagines the journey that letter will take, how it will travel across the water, over the green fields of England, and eventually land on a wooden porch half a world away. He can almost see his mother's hand reaching for the envelope, her face lit by the morning sun. That vision is his anchor, a golden thread pulling him through the blackness of the river. The crossing feels like it takes an eternity, a slow drift through a watery limbo. But then, the front of the boat slides into the soft mud of the southern bank. Hands reach down from the shadows, strong, warm hands that pull them upward, out of the canvas shells and onto the solid earth. "You're safe," a voice whispers in the dark. "You're home now, lad." The men stumble onto the grass, their legs shaky and uncertain. They are led toward small, flickering lanterns hidden in the lee of a dike. Here, there are blankets, thick, dry, woolen blankets that smell of soap and sunlight. They wrap themselves in the warmth, the heavy fabric feeling like a miracle against their sodden skin. There is hot tea, served in large tin mugs that burn their cold fingers. They hold the mugs close to their faces, breathing in the steam, letting the warmth thaw the frozen places in their chests. They sit in the tall grass of the levee, looking back across the river. In the distance, they can see the faint, orange glow of fires in the woods they just left. The rain continues to fall, a steady, rhythmic weeping that seems to mourn the end of the great plan. They are survivors, but they do not feel like victors. They feel like men who have been through a storm and have come out the other side changed, their spirits tempered by the shadows and the silence. They begin to talk, but only in low, hushed tones. They don't talk about the battles or the numbers. They talk about the taste of the tea. They talk about the way the grass feels beneath their boots. They talk about the first thing they want to do when they get back to their own streets. A man near the lantern pulls out a small, silver harmonica and plays a single, long note, a clear, mournful sound that hangs in the damp air before dissolving into the rain. It is a tribute to the river, to the woods, and to the pieces of their hearts they left behind on the other side. The night is long, and the dawn is still hours away. But as they sit together under their shared blankets, the tension that has held them for days begins to slowly, agonizingly unwind. They lean their heads on one another's shoulders, their eyes closing as the warmth of the tea and the safety of the shore finally take hold. They are bound together now by a secret that only they know, the secret of the whispers on the riverbank, the strength of a linked hand in the dark, and the quiet resilience of the human spirit when it is pushed to its very limit. The river continues to flow, a dark, silent witness to the passage of the shadows. The rain continues to wash the world clean, turning the mud back into earth and the sorrow back into memory. And in the quiet of the southern bank, the young men sleep, a deep, heavy, restorative sleep, cradled in the arms of the night, while the whispers of the riverbank fade into the mist. They have left the woods. They have crossed the water. They are tired, they are changed, but they are together. And as the first light of a gray, wet morning begins to touch the horizon, the silence of the riverbank feels less like an ending and more like a quiet, somber peace. A peace woven from the rain, the dark, and the enduring love of brothers who refuse to let go of each other's hands in the middle of the night. The wind is the only voice left in the hollows of the woods, a soft, wandering sigh that brushes over the silent earth. The great, thunderous heartbeat that had gripped the land for those long September days has finally stilled. The air, once thick with the scent of oil and the roar of metal, is now impossibly clear, smelling only of damp pine needles, wet heather, and the cooling breath of autumn. It is a profound, heavy silence, the kind of quiet that feels like a physical weight, settling over the fields, the rivers, and the narrow, winding streets. The world has tucked itself back into a somber, gray sleep, as if the landscape itself is exhausted by the weight of the stories it has been forced to carry. If you were to walk through the tall grass of the landing zones now, you would see the ghosts of the Great Armada resting in the mud. The beautiful silk parachutes, which once drifted through the sky like magnificent snowflakes, are now tangled in the thorny thickets and draped over the branches of the ancient oaks. They look like the discarded gowns of 1,000 vanished dancers, their vibrant greens and earth-toned browns faded by the rain and the mist. The wind catches a corner of the fabric, making it flutter with a soft, ghostly rustle, a final, lingering wave from the boys who have moved on into the shadows. Scattered amongst the heather are the tiny, heartbreaking remnants of 1,000 private lives. A single, leather-bound boot, its laces trailing in the dirt. A dented mess tin, still holding a silver spoon. A fountain pen, its ink long since run dry into the thirsty soil. These are the small, silent witnesses to the boys who were once here. Each item is a fragment of a home far away, a reminder of a kitchen table in a sleepy English village, or a sun-drenched porch in the American Midwest. The earth is slowly beginning to pull these things into itself, wrapping them in moss and fallen leaves, as if trying to soothe the memory of the conflict. The Dutch families are stepping out from their cellars now. They move with a slow, hesitant grace, their eyes blinking against the unaccustomed brightness of the afternoon sun. They stand on their doorsteps, looking at the scarred brickwork of their homes and the charred remains of the orchards they have tended for generations. They do not shout, and they do not weep loudly. Their grief is a quiet, dignified thing, held deep within the chest. A mother walks into her garden and finds a small, silk-lined hole where a soldier had spent his nights. She reaches down and finds a crumpled piece of paper, half buried in the mud. It is a drawing, sketched in charcoal, of a small cottage with smoke curling from the chimney. She brushes the dirt away with a gentle, trembling thumb, looking at the lines drawn by a hand that was surely seeking comfort in the dark. She folds the paper carefully and tucks it into her apron. She doesn't know the boy's name, but she will keep his dreams safe in her pocket, a silent promise to the mother she will never meet. In the village streets, the orange ribbons are still tied to the gateposts, but they are wet and limp now, their vibrant colors softened by the persistent rain. The children walk through the puddles, their faces thoughtful and old. They look at the empty fields where the great wooden gliders still sit, their wings broken like those of fallen birds. The children do not play amongst the wreckage, they walk past it with a quiet reverence, sensing that the silence of the fields is something that must be respected. They remember the taste of the chocolate and the warmth of the smiles, and they carry those memories like small, glowing embers into the cold winter ahead. Far away, across the gray expanse of the sea, the world is also growing quiet. In the little houses with white fences and the narrow apartments above the busy shops, the lamps are lit for the evening. Mothers and wives sit by the windows, their hands busy with knitting or mending, but their eyes are constantly drifting toward the garden gate. They are waiting for the postman. They are waiting for the familiar, rhythmic thud of a letter landing on the mat, a letter that will tell them the apples are being harvested and the nights are growing cold. There is a particular kind of silence in a house that is waiting for news. It is a silence filled with the rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock and the soft hiss of the tea kettle on the stove. Every footstep on the pavement outside makes the heart skip a beat, every ring of the telephone carries the weight of a world. In these quiet rooms, the war is not a matter of maps or bridges, it is the presence of an empty chair at the table. It is the unread book on the nightstand. It is the unfinished letter sitting on the writing desk, waiting for a reply that is traveling through the mist of the North Sea. When the letters finally stop coming, the silence changes. It becomes a vast, hollow space that can never be fully filled. But even in this deep sorrow, there is a quiet, enduring resilience. It is found in the way a father continues to polish his son's shoes, keeping the leather bright and clean. It is found in the way a sister tells stories to her younger brothers, keeping the memory of a laugh alive in the room. They find solace in the small, everyday things, building a sanctuary of memory out of the fragments of the past. Back in the fields of Holland, the landscape is beginning its slow, patient work of healing. The dark scars in the earth are being covered by the lush, green regrowth of the autumn rains. The splintered trees are stretching their remaining branches toward the pale sky, their buds already preparing for a spring that seems impossible. The rivers flow on, indifferent and deep, carrying the fallen leaves toward the sea. The geography of the struggle is being erased by the steady, unhurried hand of nature, turning the battlefield back into a meadow. But for those who were there, the empty fields are never truly empty. They are filled with the echoes of the whispers on the riverbank. They are filled with the scent of the tea shared in the cellar. They are populated by the memories of the men who fell from the sky and the families who opened their doors. Every ancient oak and every bend in the canal holds a piece of the story, a story of bravery that didn't need to shout, and kindness that didn't need a reason. A young man, perhaps a survivor who has returned to look at the land in the fading light, stands on the edge of the woods. He doesn't see the wreckage or the mud. He sees the faces of his friends as they were in the bright light of the English dawn. He hears the soft, musical cadence of the Dutch greetings. He feels the warmth of a hand on his shoulder in the dark. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out a small, smooth river stone, a token he has carried since the crossing. He places it gently on a mossy stump, a small, humble monument to the moments that mattered. The sun begins to set over the horizon, casting long, golden shadows across the flat expanse of the countryside. The light turns the tall grass into a sea of shimmering amber, and for a few beautiful minutes, the fields look exactly as they did before the shadow fell. The world is bathed in a warm, honeyed glow that softens the jagged edges of the ruins and turns the abandoned silk into piles of radiant gold. This is the peace of the aftermath. It is a somber, reflective peace, born of loss but sustained by love. It is the quiet understanding that while the grand plans may fail and the bridges may fall, the spirit of humanity remains. It remains in the letters tucked away in cedar chests. It remains in the orange ribbons kept in kitchen drawers. It remains in the way the wind rustles through the heather, carrying the names of the brave into the vast, open sky. As the twilight deepens into a soft, velvety purple, the first stars begin to peek through the cooling air. They look down on the empty fields of September with a steady, unblinking light. The world settles into the deep, restorative quiet of a long autumn night. The breathing of the earth is slow and rhythmic, a lullaby for the weary and a prayer for the lost. Wrapped in the scent of the turning leaves and the memory of the light, the landscape rests, holding its secrets close to its heart, waiting for the healing of the snow and the eventual, inevitable return of the sun. The silk in the trees is still. The water in the canals is calm. The homes in the villages are dark, but for the small, warm glow of a single candle in a window, a beacon of hope that refuses to go out. In the empty fields, the story of Market Garden has found its rest, floating softly, quietly, beautifully, on the edge of a fading dream. A single purple bell of heather bows its head in the breeze, holding within its petals the silent weight of 1,000 vanished whispers. The world has turned many times since those golden September days, but the landscape of the Dutch lowlands has a long and faithful memory. If you were to walk today through the quiet woods near the old hotels, or stand on the banks of the wide, slow-moving rivers, you would find a peace so profound it feels as though the earth itself is protecting a sacred secret. The ancient pines still stand tall and watchful, their dark needles catching the silver light of the morning mist. The canals still mirror the shifting colors of the autumn sky, their surfaces untroubled by anything more than the ripple of a passing swan or the soft landing of a fallen leaf. Time has a way of softening the sharpest edges. The deep craters in the earth have become gentle, moss-covered hollows where wild violets bloom in the spring. The jagged ruins of the brick houses have been rebuilt, their windows now glowing with the warm, steady light of families gathered around evening meals. The iron bridge, once a lonely island of struggle, now carries the hum of quiet cars and the laughter of children on bicycles, its great gray arches reaching across the water like a permanent handshake between the past and the present. But if you listen closely to the wind as it rustles through the tall grass of the old landing zones, you can still hear the echoes of the stories that were written here. They are not stories of grand designs or heavy machines, but the delicate, enduring stories of the human heart. In a small, sun-drenched attic in a quiet Dutch village, an elderly woman sits by a dormer window. Her hands, now thin and translucent like fine parchment, rest on the lid of a weathered cedar chest. Inside, tucked between layers of soft linen, is a square of white silk, yellowed slightly by the passage of decades. It is a piece of a parachute, a fragment of the sky that fell into her garden when she was just a girl with ribbons in her hair. She runs her fingers over the smooth fabric, and for a moment, the years dissolve. She is standing on her porch again, looking into the tired, gentle eyes of a boy who gave her an apple and a shy, nervous smile. She never knew his name, and she never saw him again after the shadows lengthened that final evening. But she has kept his silk for her entire life. To her, it is not a relic of conflict, it is a piece of a dream. It is the memory of a moment when a stranger became a brother, and when the arrival of a tired boy brought the first breath of hope into her world. She has told her grandchildren about him, not about the soldier, but about the boy. She tells them how he liked the way the sunlight hit the windmills, and how he shared his last bit of chocolate with her little brother. In her stories, he is forever young, forever brave, and forever a part of the family he helped to set free. This is the true legacy of those September days, a tapestry of connection that has only grown stronger with the turning of the seasons. Every year, when the heather turns purple and the air grows crisp with the scent of autumn, the flower children return to the quiet clearings. They are the local school children, their faces bright and thoughtful, carrying bundles of marigolds and white lilies. They walk among the low stone markers, their footsteps soft on the manicured grass. Each child adopts a name, a boy from a distant land who stayed behind in the woods. They talk to the stones as if they were old friends, telling them about the new playground in the village or the way the birds are singing in the apple trees. It is a beautiful, rhythmic ritual of gratitude. The children do not see these men as figures from a history book, they see them as the guardians of their own peaceful mornings. They understand that their freedom to play in the sun was a gift given by boys who loved life just as much as they do. By tending these quiet gardens, the children ensure that no one is ever truly alone in the dark. The flowers they leave behind are more than just blossoms, they are living messages of love, sent across the bridge of time to say, "We remember you. We are living the peace you dreamt of." Across the sea, in the quiet suburbs and the rolling farmlands where the letters once arrived, the echoes remain just as strong. In a small house in the English countryside, a man looks at a framed photograph on his mantel. It is the same picture we saw in the cellar, a young man with messy hair and a confident grin, standing before a white garden gate. The man looking at the photo is the son that boy never got to hold, yet he knows his father's heart better than anyone. He knows it through the letters that are kept in a velvet-lined box in the desk. He reads those letters on quiet Sunday afternoons, his voice a soft whisper in the empty room. He reads about the taste of the cold tea in Arnhem, the smell of the damp earth in the woods, and the incredible kindness of the woman who held his father's hand in the dark. These letters are the most precious inheritance he possesses. They taught him that even in the middle of a storm, humanity is the one thing that cannot be broken. They taught him that a person is defined not by the weight they carry, but by the love they leave behind. And what of the veterans, the few who remain like the last golden leaves on a November oak? When they return to the Dutch fields, they do not come as conquerors. They come as pilgrims. They sit on the low brick walls of the villages and watch the world go by. They see the young couples walking hand in hand along the canals. They see the shopkeepers opening their doors to the morning sun. They see the windmills turning with a slow, lazy grace. They look at the peace they helped to plant, and a quiet, profound contentment settles over their weary spirits. They often meet the grandchildren of the families who hid them in the cellars, and they share a cup of tea in the very same rooms where the lanterns once flickered against the stone walls. There is no need for grand speeches or medals in these moments. A simple squeeze of the hand, a shared look of understanding, and a quiet thank you whispered over the steam of a mug are enough. They have seen the worst the world can offer, but they have also seen the best, and they choose to remember the light. The lonely span of iron is no longer lonely. It has become a place of meeting, a physical manifestation of the enduring power of connection. People from all over the world walk its length, looking down at the dark, swirling waters of the river. They see the same currents that the canvas boats once crossed, but now the water reflects the bright, colorful lights of a city at peace. The river continues its journey to the sea, carrying away the sorrows of the past and replacing them with the steady, rhythmic promise of the future. The story of Operation Market Garden is often told through the lens of movement and maps, of plans and outcomes. But the true history is written in the heather. It is written in the whispers of the riverbank, the lanterns in the cellar, and the silent prayers of the gray sky. It is a history made of a million small, beautiful pieces of humanity, acts of kindness that were given without expectation, and resilience that was found in the warmth of a brother's shoulder. As the sun begins to set on our journey, casting a long, honeyed glow over the Dutch landscape, let us take one final look at the fields. The light is soft and amber, turning the heather into a sea of radiant purple. The shadows of the poplars stretch long and gentle across the grass, as if the trees are finally laying down to rest. The air is still, carrying only the faint, sweet scent of wood smoke from the nearby chimneys. The world is safe. The sky is empty of everything but the stars. The boys who fell from the clouds and the families who opened their doors are all held in the same, protective embrace of memory. They are the echoes in the heather, a gentle, persistent song that tells us that no matter how deep the winter, the spring will always find its way back to the garden. Let us breathe in the quiet of the evening, feeling the warmth of the story in our hearts. Let us honor the brave, the kind, and the resilient by living our own lives with the same gentle grace they showed in the dark. The history is not behind us, it is within us, a part of the very ground we walk upon and the very air we breathe. The wind rustles the pines one last time, a soft, soothing lullaby for a weary world. The river flows on, a silver ribbon in the moonlight. And in the deep, velvet silence of the autumn night, the echoes of the heather fade into a beautiful, enduring peace. The dream is whole. The light remains. And the story, like the golden leaves of September, floats softly, quietly, and forever on the breath of the wind. Sleep now, and let the echoes carry you home.